Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Sorry, let me just make a quick adjustment here. All right, for those who are able to, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so welcome everybody. So I am going to fill in for Suzanne, who I believe she's in transit, so she may be here during the later part of the meeting, but we'll kick things off. So the first thing up on the agenda is For Love of Learning, and Superintendent will turn that over to you.
Sure. Unfortunately, Mr. Flanagan couldn't be here this evening, but we do want to, Mr. Kohut's going to read recognition of his years of service and honors of his retirement. He is retiring November 3rd. Do you want to come up here and I'll give you my microphone? I don't have that.
It's fine, I have it on my computer.
Okay, then take my microphone with you.
No, I'll bring it over.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It is my honor to recognize Swampscott High School social studies teacher John Flanagan on his retirement. John began teaching at Swampscott High School in February 1990 while completing his master's in teaching at Boston University. Later that year, he became a full-time teacher in the social studies department. As a teacher, John taught a variety of classes such as government, world history, United States history, law, psychology, facing history and ourselves, race, ethnicity and membership, American studies, and environmental studies. During his career, John mentored student teachers from Salem State and BU. He served as social studies department chair from 2004 to 2006 and athletic director from 2012 to 2015. He also served as vice president and president of the Swampscott Education Association from 2003 to 2015. John was chosen by the student body to speak at the 2009 graduation and was also chosen by National Honor Society inductees as an impactful teacher. He served as class advisor, advisor of Environmental Club, Recycling Club, ADL, and the Interact Club. John helped organize several events such as Operation Information Iraq, Iraq War Peace Rally, Beach Cleanup, Mix It Up Day, ADL Conference, and the Welcome to Swampscott New Families Dinner. John also made an impact on the lives of generations of athletes, serving as JV baseball coach, freshman JV and varsity basketball coach, and the varsity tennis coach. During his time as a coach, his teams won 3 NEC basketball championships, 1 Cape League championship, and 2 North sectional titles. His teams were North Shore sectional finalists 3 times. John was honored as the Cape Ann League Coach of the Year, IABBO Board 130 Coach of the Year, and the MIAA Division II North Coach of the Year. Thank you, John, for your work making an impact on the lives of countless students, and we wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Kohut. I'm very excited that we have our first of the year for the Love of Learning segment with Mr. Franklin and students. So we will support you with your presentation however we can.
My lovely assistants. Where would you like us?
Well, we would like you near a microphone, so if you want to take that microphone wherever you go and wherever you're most comfortable, that works.
I will start over here, then I will turn it over to...
And they can speak from that microphone.
Awesome, perfect. So as most of you know, we have had a mindfulness class at the high school for the past few years that went on hiatus during COVID, but now we're back. And we are back bigger than ever, actually. We have both, the class this semester and next semester both are full. Actually, we have too many people in them, which is a good thing.
That is.
And if we had a perfect world, we could run more sections of that. So what we'd like to do tonight is I have Avery and Chloe and Cece who are going to talk about, they're in the class right now, but a lot of our focus this year is very simply on switching tasks. And the processes that our brains and our bodies go through when we go from one task to the next. And it could be inside a class, it could be right before a meeting. So when you all come into the meeting, your world is out there and you've been doing things all day long. And when you come in here, your mind and your body needs 1 to 2 to 3 minutes to switch into being present here. It's like when you're deep in concentration working on something and somebody interrupts you. It takes you several minutes to get back into that again. So we take that same concept and we put that into class, that every time students walk in, and Sam will attest to this and Noel will attest to this, that we begin every class with some mindfulness. Because their days are crazy and hectic, a lot goes on, some of it is extremely wonderful and positive, and some of it may not be so, you get a test back or an essay back and it's not quite what you wanted it to be. I don't want that coming in. I want them to be present. So we always do that as a means of task switching. And so we're going to do that right now. And then I'll turn it over to my assistant. So if you would, just get comfortable in your seat. And if it's comfortable for you, just softly close your eyes. If not, just a fixed stare will be fine. And all we're going to do is to do 3 very intentional deep breaths. We'll take a long, deep breath in. And hold it, and then right at the top, take a little small breath on top of that, and then a long exhale through your mouth. Another deep breath in, a small breath on top of that, and a very intentional breath out through your mouth. And one more very deep breath in. Small breath. And on the out breath, as though your entire body is breathing. So 3 things happened there while you were doing that. One is that on the in-breath and the small breath, your heart speeds up a little bit. But on the out-breath, because it's much longer than the in-breath, your heart rate slows down and you begin to relax a little bit more. The second thing that happens is a little more esoteric, and that is you are creating a space, pressing the pause button from whatever you were doing before into what you're doing now. And thirdly, physiologically begins to reset and rewire your brain. That breathing then becomes more intentional, and when you do breathe intentionally, your heart rate drops, your stress level drops. And it takes literally less than a minute to do that. So with that, Avery?
Hi, my name's Avery Laundrie. I'm a junior at Swampscott, and I'm in Mr. Franklin's mindfulness class. Last year, when I had to choose my electives, I didn't plan on taking mindfulness at all. I kind of grazed over it as a subject topic. But when I got my classes back this year, and obviously wanted to change things around as a junior, I had a lot of academic classes going and I needed a filler. So I kind of chose mindfulness without really thinking about what it was or like how in depth the course was going to be. But I was pleasantly surprised when I came to the class and found out what it was about and kind of what we would be practicing. We do a lot of different techniques, but one that I want to share with you is finger breathing. So I have papers that I'm just going to give to you guys to look at. It's a technique that kind of is like,
Thank you.
when you're in a moment and you're feeling overwhelmed or like your environment around you is kind of moving faster than your brain, it brings you back to the present moment, and it's a good way to physically be in touch with your body and just think about where you are, kind of calm you down. So here's your one. So to start, you can just take either your left or right hand, and you start at the base of your thumb. And you just take a moment and you drag your fingers up the side for about 5 seconds. You can just count. You reach the top, and you stop for a brief moment. You count to 5 again as you go down. Stop. Slowly go up. Down. And follow your breathing as you do it. Up and down, and inhale and exhale. And you can do it as many times as you need when it comes to like a moment of time where you just want to come back to present moment and you feel like you can't do it without it. I'm a pretty nervous person. I don't really like talking, but I, outside of the mindfulness classroom, have caught myself doing this quite a few times without even realizing, and just like noticed how much it helps. And I think that having a mindfulness class in the curriculum and like having techniques, especially now and today with all like mental health issues that everyone deals with, it's really helpful to have different techniques that work for you. And finger breathing might not necessarily been your favorite, but there's a ton of different ones that we do that I also think about daily. So I really enjoy the class and hope you liked finger breathing, learning about it.
Nice job.
Hi, I'm Chloe Overbaugh. I'm also a junior in mindfulness class. I'm just going to pass out my papers first before I start.
Want us to just pass them down? Sure.
So I would say I'm also a very anxious person. I have a lot of thoughts all the time, and I think mindfulness class is like something I've actually really enjoyed. It was, unlike Avery, it's something I've like heard about since I was like a freshman, and it's something I always knew I wanted to take. So luckily this year I could fit into my schedule. So what I'm going to talk about is not really an exercise, but more of like a mindset that you can choose to take on. So it's called reacting versus responding. So when you're faced with something that bothers, angers, or upsets you, we always have the choice of how to respond. We have the choice to either react or respond. And this is a choice I actually, now that I know this strategy, I find myself thinking about in my day-to-day life, even outside of the classroom. So reacting to a trigger would be surrendering to the emotion and kind of letting it overtake your actions, overtake your words. And a lot of times this ends up being a waste of energy. It's kind of unproductive in actually dealing with the situation. So on the other hand, responding to a trigger would be kind of actually analyzing the situation, like taking a step back to find the next best step to take in resolving it. And this can be a lot harder than, like, it's easier said than done, because I mean, I think all of us know, like, when we're angry, it's really easy to kind of just like snap. But there is a small bridge between the trigger and the action. And if we take advantage of that bridge, we can decide which route we want to go down. So an example of this would be, kind of like doing poorly on a test. So instead of like letting the anger or discouragement cause you to get verbally upset towards the teacher or begin to diminish your self-worth, which would be reacting, you could recognize these emotions, but then take the productive step of talking to the teacher or getting extra help. That would be the responding route. Another example could be, because I think a lot of people think about this with just like anger, but I think it can also work in situations of self-doubt or when you make mistakes or regret things. So like, for example, you could do something that hurts someone you care about, and instead of the impulsive reaction to deflect the blame or convince yourself you're an awful person, you could instead take accountability, apologize, and work to avoid making the same mistake in the future. Yeah, that's basically the moral of it. I mean, the moral of the story. And yeah, I think that I feel like I've caught myself using this like so many times since I've learned about it. It's one of the things that we've learned that's like resonated with me the most. And I feel like I think it just helps us be productive and more productive to handling situations that have like big emotions. Anyways, though, I do think I've really, really benefited from this class. It is something, I'm kind of biased because it's something I'm more interested in and something that I resonate with, mindfulness. But I think, like, even what Avery was talking about, people who don't and who weren't interested in it, I feel like everyone has been benefiting from the class. So I think it's something that we should definitely keep in the electives that we can take. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cece O'Connor. I'm also a junior in Mr. Franklin's mindfulness class. I'm going to be talking to you about the circles of attention. So there's 3 circles of attention. The first one is the past, so things that have already happened, conversations that have already happened, everything. Second is the present, so things that are happening right now, whether you're in class or whether you're anywhere else. And third circle is the future. Our mind tends to wander and stay in third circle most often, and it's pretty natural, it just happens. Sometimes it can even be in first circle, thinking back to a previous conversation you had the other day, or just thinking about practice yesterday. What's important is that when you find yourself straying from second circle, you just take a nice anchoring breath and just find yourself back to second circle, stay in the moment, stay present, and just continue to try to stay in second circle. It is completely natural to go to the other 2 circles though.
Thank you. So these are just, thank you again, that was awesome. These are just 3 tools or exercises that we work with. We have a whole toolbox that we build. I look at myself as being a gardener, and all I'm doing is planting seeds. And as Chloe said, you don't know which ones are going to resonate with you. Something may not, but giving them an arsenal, and it's not just for students as well. We also do this in faculty meetings. We start off again switching tasks back and forth again. Faculty comes in, they've had a day. It just allows us to be, without being anything but secular about it, just allows us to be present and perform our best where we are. And as Mr. Kohut says frequently on the Big Blue Bees, and after a while, nobody listens to it, but I listen to it, and that is that be where your feet are, and that's the only place you can be. And using the circles of attention, and I know everybody in this room, even though you've physically been here for 20 minutes, you've left the room multiple times. Whether, again, it was into the past of something you did or you didn't do, you said or you didn't say, or what's next, how long is this going to go on, when do I get to go home, when do I get dinner? Your feet are here. So thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I think it always puts smiles on our face when we get back to beginning our meetings with For the Love of Learning. It really is about the work that we do with the kids. Thank you. Cece?
Superintendent, I think the panel has some questions.
Oh, sure.
Can we ask you guys some questions? Mr. Franklin, not that I apologize if you haven't had a chance to prepare for this, but I would also imagine that to some degree you have thought about this. If we were in a perfect world and our budget were whatever we wanted it to be and our time frame was whatever we wanted it to be, how would you structure this differently?
For a perfect world, I would have hair.
Me too, Mr. Frank.
Wouldn't it be a perfect world?
Perfect world, yes it would.
Have to worry about. It's something, that's a tough question.
It's a lot.
It doesn't need to be a standalone class, although it's a vehicle right now, and if there's a way to kind of imbue that into what we do, our culture. It's what, it happens when the freshmen and sophomores, and it happens in the faculty. It's just part of that. When we talk about it, people go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then we go back to what we were doing, because we're just not trained to do that. And it is being trained to do that. And I don't know. I can't. I don't know.
As a parent, my daughter hears obviously in this. This is the only time in years that she has said to me, I can't wait that next week is a B week, because that means that she has you twice as many times as, in her A week. And to look forward to be in that third circle, and to hear that as not only as a parent, but then to bring that here to the school committee, it seems so, it resonates so much. And Noelle and I were also just similarly talking about her experiences.
Noelle took the class last year, and
I really liked it. It was very enjoyable, and I wish I could take it again.
And you will.
Hopefully.
And so when your daughter says she's looking forward to that week, she's talking about AP Lang, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
That's what I thought you were saying. So it was a great question. I don't have an answer off the top of my head how to do that. It's more systemic, I think. but I think it's doable.
Because, Mr. Kohut, if I'm right, this is sort of sandwiched into English, or no? Is it part of the English offerings? No?
No, it's not, no, it doesn't meet the standards for English, it's kind of its own thing. I think to Peter's point, ideally, it would be something that would be in every class in some way, shape, or form, but there's a lot of obvious discomfort, right? I don't think right now, it's been a while since I earned my master's, but I don't think there's like mindfulness training as part of teacher training, right? So, thank you. So I think it would ideally, yeah, it would be part of what we do in every class to start a class, but not everyone is comfortable with it, and not everyone has had the training.
Mr. Frank, I actually kind of a real world question. We live in a very difficult time right now, you know, especially over the last several weeks, whether it was yesterday in Maine or whatever else. Are you seeing your students come in more stressed? And how are they dealing with that? And then you as an educator, how are you guiding your students to, as you say, have your feet on the ground, right, in the classroom when there is just so much noise around them?
It's a good question. We talk in class, and we create that space in the beginning, and that's one very, very small piece. And I know that when I'm working with a class, I'm dealing with 20, 30,000 thoughts a day that they're having, and trying to get in there. So it's water slowly working against a big granite cliff, and these are difficult times. We're on 24/7. That we all know the impact of that and what that creates. And there are little things that can be done to help temporarily. Can't protect them from the outside world. I mean, that's reality, because as soon as they leave, they go outside and they get hit with all of that. But I don't equate it to being like Sisyphus. I don't feel that way. It's just one step, one step, one step. And I still get feedback from students who graduated years ago who say, I still do this, and it helps. And if there's just that one little thing, you know, that the classic, if you touch one student, you've made a significant impact, and keeping it real. Otherwise, it gets very frustrating.
Thank you. You guys did a fantastic job. Wow. Great job. All three of you. Great speaking. Good job. You're welcome.
So thank you for having us here. We're way beyond our time.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. So I think we're at committee comments. So I'll just start at the end of the table with Sam.
Hi. As far as announcements go, there's a couple. First, obviously, went on Salem State visit last week, and November 13th they have the end of college visit. Additionally, this week on Tuesday, we had a joint bake sale fundraiser with the JSU, the Jewish Student Union, and it went really well. And we're gonna have it one more time next week, next Tuesday after school. Aside from that, quarter one grades I think close at the end of next week, and then we play MassCue as a final game of the regular season tomorrow. So yeah.
Regular season is over already?
Yeah.
I think
Wow.
volleyball, did you just say the last season, the last game's
Last game of the
tomorrow?
regular season. Yep.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
But I did hear today from Ms. Wolf in a request to come on the 9th. It's the middle of tournament season, and a lot of teams made it to the tournaments.
Yep.
So, yeah,
That's exciting.
it is. So I'll
Good.
have to
Yeah.
reschedule her visit, but that was great news.
Yeah, we're good for sure because we won 3 games, but aside from Marblehead, it's the end of regular season. But yeah, it went by fast.
Karen?
I don't have anything tonight. I just want to, I don't know that either one of you students were apologized to for not being alerted to the canceled meeting last week.
They were alerted.
It got.
Like-
we were alerted.
Did?
There were lots
Okay.
of phone calls made
Yeah.
from my office
All
to
right,
both
I just
students
didn't
and
know.
parents.
I'd heard that and I was just like,
No,
all right, I just want to make sure.
students and parents were
All right,
called
sorry.
of all the
Thank you.
students.
Thank you. No, I don't have any I don't have any comments.
I just have one quick thing. So just, I don't know if anybody remembers last year at Thanksgiving time, the high school cheerleaders had a pie sale, and it's a great fundraiser, and my wife's actively, she's still helping out even though Helen's graduated already. And that is going to be kicking off. They're going to be handing out some flyers tomorrow night at the football game. And so find your high school cheerleader if you are interested in Thanksgiving pie. Again, they're coming from Spinelli's, so they always get great reviews, and pick up a few days before Thanksgiving. So just wanted to make that announcement. So Glenn?
Really, I have nothing for tonight.
I have a couple of things. It seems like a long time ago, but it was just at our last meeting. I wanted to apologize to the superintendent. When we were talking about Yonder, I think because we know each other and because we have worked together for so long, I was very flip with my words, and I insinuated that I thought you were sneaky, and I don't. And I just want to say publicly that if there is one thing among many things that I can count on you for, it's to always be very honest. And I really appreciate that about you. So my apologies.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I had the good fortune of attending the one-act plays the other night. It was a very small audience. I felt bad for the kids. They put a lot of work into it. So hopefully there'll be a bigger turnout at the next one. And then last but not least, I just want to thank the district for giving me the opportunity to participate in the seed training. It is exhausting work, but so mindful and so important to what the district is doing. And it is, I feel really honored to be able to sit in a classroom with all of our educators and to see not only what they're learning, but also I feel like I've been given a sneak peek, like behind the scenes, of who these people are who are educating our kids, and I feel really, really good about it. So I wanted to share that.
Awesome.
Will?
First off, Model UN is having a Panera sale today, so if you go and buy Panera, you can put in a code and it'll support Model UN. We're going to a convention in Boston, which is one of the biggest conventions in the United States, which is very, it's going to be a very interesting opportunity. And I also attended a meeting with Principal Kohut to talk about how to improve the school, and we talked about the phone policy and certain other things, so it was really nice to be invited to that, and I appreciate that. And also, the boys soccer team tied with MassCue yesterday, and they will be going into the playoffs.
Yeah, cool. Yay. Great news.
That's excellent. So I think next up, if we're all set, is the superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. And we're going to start out by honoring one of our students. So I'm going to call Mr. Kohut down, hand off the microphone.
My honor to recognize Maxwell Manatee for the Certificate for Academic Excellence for Swampscott High School. Max is an intelligent, kind, and accomplished Swampscott High School student. He's #1 in the class of 2024 and takes every opportunity to excel in rigorous AP courses. Max is passionate about pursuing a career in the medical field after graduation and plans to become a doctor. He had an enriching summer, gaining experience in the field with 2 internships. First, Max worked as a research intern at the University of California, Riverside, conducting experiments and developing solutions for medical issues. He's listed as a contributor to a paper published by the National Science Foundation. Additionally, Max interned at Harn Engineering Solutions in Bangkok, Thailand. As an intern, he had the opportunity to shadow engineers, implement 3D printable material in the medical field, and conduct site visits at a teaching hospital. Outside of school, Max demonstrates his passion for helping others. He is the secretary of the Interact Club, a community service club here at SHS. Furthermore, he volunteers at the North Shore Rovers, where he practices soccer with students to build their communication skills in a supportive environment. Max is also a 3-sport athlete playing on the SHS soccer, track, and tennis teams. Max is an amazing example of a dedicated and well-rounded student. We cannot wait to see what is next for Max.
It's like amazing.
Come on over here. It's a photo op. You're very, very impressive.
Oh, it's a photo op.
Congratulations. Mr. Kohut's going to read what the certificate says.
Max, just want to read this certificate of academic excellence. Maxwell Manatee, having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, is hereby awarded this certificate of academic excellence. Congratulations, Max.
Sorry, I'm
Mr.
kind of.
Kohut, don't go anywhere because we're going to do a photo.
Oh, great.
We're going to say a few words first. There we go. Go ahead.
Sorry, this is kind of on the spot. I don't have anything prepared right now, but I just want to say it's truly a great honor to be awarded this. And aside from my family who has supported me in everything that I do, I'd like to thank the community of staff and teachers around me because they've truly pushed me to this point where I'm able to do all the things that I've done. And I really appreciate it, so thank you all.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh, congratulations to your parents, your family. How exciting.
We'll do a... Congratulations. So very proud. Wait, one more. So proud of you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much.
So you'd be so proud.
Max, where do you want to go to school?
That's what we all want to ask, yeah.
So there's a lot of lists right now, but
Run them down, go
A
ahead.
lot of application fees.
I'm trying to get out of this state. Trying to do a couple Ivies, maybe something like Yale, but if that doesn't work out, because it's always a big bid, maybe something like U of Richmond.
Oh, that's a great school.
My interests are like in many schools, so I'm not completely sure right now.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's been so fun, Max. I've been watching you play soccer, only because I have a nephew on the team. And the other day I was reading this that you were going to be here, and I was like, Max, which one is Max? And I was like, oh my God. I was telling everyone in the audience, he's the smartest kid in the school. And it was just,
Upsetting because this is like the first time in I think maybe a decade or so that the boys soccer team has made it to the playoffs.
you guys have been looking really, really good. So much improvement. It's unbelievable.
Right now, which is
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
like
impressive.
so much improvement over the season. They're really, you guys look great.
a really good team this year.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch.
That's great.
Anyway.
Great.
Congratulations.
Congrats. Good luck in playoffs. Congratulations.
If I could have the superintendent's report brought up on the screen, because there's a lot of links on this to the presentations, unless the people that are presenting want to control their own presentations. I don't know how we want to do that. If you click on superintendent's report, that will bring it up, that link right there. And I am going to go down one. Mr. Calichman and Mr. Kohut, you probably want to take this mic. We'll just be passing it back and forth all night.
Do you want to say where we go?
Oh, well,
we
sure.
going now?
Well, you're going to talk about the ADL Good Fight?
I'm sorry.
So I want to just introduce this next. This was more timely at the meeting on the 12th, but, thank you, sorry. We had signed up as a district. I've been a member of the North Shore ADL Advisory Council for several years now, and unfortunately, the timing of their quarterly meetings has conflicted with my chairman of the board role with the North Shore Education Consortium. They both took place on Wednesday mornings. And this year I was committed to, I just felt a commitment and a strong urge to get back involved. And so the first meeting took place a couple of weeks ago on October 10th, and I had one of my superintendent colleagues take over my chairman roles of the board at the North Shore Education Consortium, so I could attend. And I attended at the Danvers Police Department, and District Attorney Paul Tucker was there, and this was prior to all of the world events that have been going on, but it reminded me why I like to be so involved. And at that time, they were talking about a conference. My meeting must have been earlier because the conference was on October 10th, and it was in Boston, and we were committed to sending a team. And we were the only ones that sent students to this. It was very college-based, I think. In the end, I was having anecdotal conversations with Mrs. O'Connor the other day that it is the role of the superintendent that inevitably things get in the way, and I wasn't able to attend, but I had put in my superintendent's report that not only Principal Calichman, Principal Kohut, Hadley Woodfin, and Emily McDonald high school teachers who are the advisors to the ADL, and then student leaders, Coco Clompton, UB Equi, I might have said that wrong, I'm sorry, Victoria Cogrello, Luca Croft, and Ella Carlin all went. So our district was really well represented, and I just wanted Mr. Kohut and Mr. Calichman to say a few words about the day. I know we talked about the word intense, so I'll take it away, please.
So I think I want to echo what you said to start, that I think when we looked around and saw that we had the only kids there, it was a little nerve-wracking in the fact that, you show up, and now, because of the timing of it, there were armed guards when we walked in, and we were the only school bringing high school-age kids there. But the kids were amazing. I thought they did such a great job, were such attentive listeners and had such great questions and tremendous discussion as well. So we were well represented. I think what struck me, like I said, the armed guards right away, the intensity around Boston, just when we were going in there, you knew you weren't just going to a normal conference. We had the president of Brandeis was a keynote speaker, the head of the ADL in Boston, there was a Harvard representative. So when Mrs. Angelakis talks about sort of how it was college-based, it was really how are the universities tackling this? How are they tackling protests? How are they having discussion with student leaders? How are their leaders, community leaders, discussing things with parents? So it was a little different, but all applicable to things that we're going to deal with as well. There were graphic stories being told, and it was early on, before all, it's been a few weeks now, so everybody's kind of heard some of the graphic things that are happening. We got it the next day or 48 hours later. The fear, there was somebody who live streamed, made a video and was talking about just how the fear that they're living in right now, don't know what the next attack from Hamas would be. And the other thing that came up was sort of how it applies to our school, and really in the middle school, a little bit different than the high school, where we have kids who say things that are mean and nasty sometimes, and I don't think that means they are anti-Semitic or racist or homophobic or whatever. I think they're sometimes making mistakes, but that doesn't make it okay. So the intent versus impact was really something that struck me as a middle school principal, that the amount of times over the course of 12 years being at the middle school where I've heard, well, I was joking, we were joking, he's my friend, she's my friend, she knew I was kidding. We need to start making sure the kids are taking responsibility for the impact more so than the intent. And that was a huge takeaway from me. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, to echo what Jason said about the intensity, when I parked and walked over to the Renaissance, is that where it was? Yeah. There was a state trooper outside with an M16, and it immediately took me back to 9/11. I remember, we all remember that, like seeing that, and going in and hearing these stories. Like Jason said, there was some live stream communication with people affiliated with ADL in Israel from Jerusalem, speaking about what was going on there, and there were things that I learned there that I hadn't seen on the news. And the kids were great. I mean, it was very intense. They had a session for everyone in the morning and then breakouts the afternoon. I went to one that was specifically about anti-Semitism on college campuses. And that was interesting to me because I had no idea sort of the level that is now. And there was a student who's currently a Harvard student. She's Israeli. She grew up in Hong Kong. She was in the IDF in Israel for 4 years. She had seen combat. and she was in tears talking about her experiences in Cambridge at Harvard. And she said, I never thought something like this would happen in America, let alone at Harvard. And just feeling, and that was something that was shared. There was a student from BC, or no, recent graduate from BC, and a gentleman who runs the Hillel at the University of Vermont, all with similar themes about how Jewish students were not feeling supported at this time, and feeling like these universities immediately made statements when other really terrible, tragic things happened, but were silent when this happened in Israel. So that was very eye-opening for me. And I know that oftentimes things that happen in colleges sort of trickle down to high schools in terms of that. So it was good for me to kind of be prepared and think about, like, if we were to have some things like what Jason had mentioned here, how we would address them here. And it's great we have two new advisors to ADL. I think they bring a unique perspective, different energy to it. We have a great leadership group of students. So although it was intense and there were things that were said that were certainly, disturbing, I really feel like it was beneficial for the kids to sort of experience that, so that we can be prepared to be able to respond to any kind of incidents of hate that we have in the building, or even at SMS. So I know in the past we had sent ADL kids down to SMS to do workshops. So worthwhile, intense for sure, but definitely worthwhile.
And, I want to shout out Hadley and Emily, because they were the ones that convinced me that they wanted to take student leaders. And the timing was, I remember that, just a couple of days in, and because we were getting messages about the security that was going to be there, and we still went through with the visit, and I was really proud that Swampscott was represented so well. Yeah. So thank you both.
Very cool.
Next item on my agenda is about high school graduation. I have looked at the policy manual, and there's nothing that dictates when graduation has to take place. And so Mr. Kohut and I have been talking about this actually for a couple of years now, and this is the first year that we're going to plan to move graduation from Sunday afternoon to Friday night. This year, it would fall on May 31st. We're not alone with this date. MassCue has it. I know Peabody does a Friday night graduation. Salem does a Friday night graduation. I think it gives families more time to celebrate with their families with an uninterrupted weekend. And we're hoping that we'll have more educators there, because it's at the end of their day and potentially people would stay. So we're looking forward to that. I think you're getting your colleagues' approval. So that's just an information. We're saying this so early because we do need to secure the field covering, and so Mr. Kohut's going to move on that.
It's exciting.
So May 31st would be the high school graduation date this year. There is a requested athletic handbook change from Ms. Wolf. This apparently, we missed it in August, and it's ready to go. Basically, the old policy said any student who has been absent from school or is dismissed from school before 11 a.m. that day of practice or competition may not participate and attend the activity. What they wanted to remove is the exceptions will be made with prior approval from the athletic director. Basically, the old policy was saying, the old procedure was saying, you could go home and rest and play in a game. And Ms. Wolf caught it and thought, no, you can attend school and you can play in a game. So she's changed the language and drafted the language so that any student who arrives to school after 8:25, 15 minutes after the start of the day or delay starts, will be ineligible to practice or play that day. Friday's attendance determines weekend eligibility. So it was very odd that it was in there that they could go home and rest before a game. And it's inadvertently made it sound like athletics was more important than academics.
So there's no exception for kids to have doctor's appointments?
If somebody has a doctor's appointment.
It's just an unexcused absence.
Unexcused, where kids were just getting dismissed and going home. So it's more of a change she's already made. She just wanted to make sure I brought it before the school committee. Which the more we look in, every year we catch something, and it's interesting that we just caught this.
It seems so obvious.
It does,
Yeah,
it does.
Makes perfect sense, actually.
The next one is a little delayed. It's about MassCue, the Massachusetts Computer Using Educators Conference that took place on October 18th and October 19th at Gillette Stadium. Our team goes there every year. If somebody could click on that link. I know you got this to show that Miss Mackie Knowles is very fiscally responsible, and that if you want to go, you better be presenting because you get a discounted rate. And therefore, we had Miss Mackie Knowles was presenting. We had Mrs. Comparato. We had Natalie Poverchuk, Lauren O'Connor, our robotics teacher, Priscilla King, and Molly Metbier. I know, Ms. O'Connor, you sent me an email about what Natalie was presenting and would love her to come before school committee sometime. I will have that conversation with her. I know her schedule's tight with 2 little ones at home, but let's see if we can get her to come in.
And Priscilla King, she said Priscilla was really the star of that.
So I'll try to get for a Love of Learning for them to come and do a little presentation. But, you know, it's one of those things when Mrs. Steller and I were talking about budget and where we're at, and you're going to hear about that a little bit later. You know, the question was, do we send a team? And we do send a team because Miss Mackie Knowles should be on the board of, you know, MassCue and be working at the state level. And I do see her there sometime, but the fact that they get a discounted rate because they're presenting. And I was going to try to go down on the 19th again, so the ADL I missed, the 19th I missed to go to Gillette to watch them. But most of them were presenting on the 18th anyway. So really proud of our team. What they bring back is invaluable. The networking alone is invaluable, and it's a really fun day. And if you do follow Miss Mackie Knowles, she was taking video of them on the field, and she thought they were getting on the field because I was going to be there, but guess what? I never made it there. So they got on the field anyway, and they get a photo on the field. And Swampscott has never had that happen at MassCue, and it happened this year. So
that's exciting.
It's all good stuff.
So I don't know how it came across my desk, but I saw that Natalie was presenting on unplugging in the classroom, and I thought it was particularly interesting coming from one of our tech experts. So
You're right. I'd love to hear what she has to say about that.
I will make sure I invite, coordinate their schedules and try to get them, both Priscilla and Natalie, here.
It was just one of those things that particularly resonated because of, you know, whenever Martha comes before us to talk about students entering school and, you know, sort of getting back to basics in the classroom, I just thought it was very interesting coming from a technology person. So.
Okay, and then next we start our presentations next. The first presentation of the evening is Dr. Bacon presenting the MCAS 2023 presentation. Okay, yes, you do.
Okay, and there we go. Somebody has it up. Great. Okay, so the superintendent asked me to come and talk a little bit about our MCAS results from last year, and we also want to talk to you a little bit about the accountability system, which has been started in 2018, the new accountability system, and it's kind of been in and out since COVID, but we wanted to bring you up to speed because I think Desi's sort of back on track with that now. So if you go to the next slide. I just wanted to remind you of the context for this presentation. So we're using 2019 as our base year. That was the year before COVID. And then in 2020, we have no MCAS results because that was our COVID year. 2021 was our year of a lot of hybrid and remote learning, and we had a half MCAS that year. 2022, we were in person, but we still had distancing restrictions at different points in the year. So last year was really our first regular year since before COVID. So I just wanted to give that context. Go to the next slide. So the first thing I wanted to look at is how we're doing compared to how we were doing before COVID. So have we recovered to our pre-COVID levels? So the next few slides sort of go over that. And the first slide, this is our ELA results from 2019 through 2023. The blue bar is 2019. The gold bar is our first post-COVID year. So you can see in ELA at every grade span, and particularly for the elementary, the drop between our pre-COVID performance and our post-COVID performance is pretty dramatic, both at elementary, somewhat at middle school, a little less at high school. And when you also can look at the difference from last year, the gold to the green, and you'll see that in general, the middle school and high school continued to drop in their performance between 2022, our sort of first year back, and 2023, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the elementary started to have some improvement from our post-COVID first year back low. And one of the things we changed, a couple things we changed last year, we have extended our Foundations Early Literacy program up through grade 3. So we did teacher training and bought them new materials, and they did that last year. And we also piloted a new phonemic awareness program at early elementary, which wouldn't necessarily have impacted those results, but those are some of the changes we're making in literacy. So we hope we're on an upward trend with literacy at the elementary levels. The next slide is about our math performance. And you see here again, there was a significant pre-post-COVID drop at the middle school and the high school, and something that continues to drop in our second year post-COVID. At the elementary, good news is that we see an improvement in performance. And elementary math is the only grade span or subject area where we've now exceeded our pre-COVID performance. So we attribute that to the changes that we've made in the math program, the strong support we gave teachers in the implementation through training and coaching, and we made some changes to our Tier 2, our supplemental services in mathematics, and also the very hard work of classroom teachers. It's a heavy lift, particularly in the last couple of years, to implement a new program, and we really appreciate all their hard work, and it's clearly paying off in terms of student achievement at the elementary level. One thing I do want to point out about the middle school results, because we were a little bit surprised, because last year in middle school we also implemented a new math curriculum, and teachers participated in training, and we were kind of surprised that the results were flat, and we didn't see any kind of improvement. So you might expect a dip because of new implementation, you might expect a little improvement, but when we dug deeper into the data, we realized that there was one grade level, 6th grade last year, which was particularly challenged with a lot of staffing turnover and big leaves, and it was a lot of going on in 6th grade. And when we looked at the results for 6th grade, they were really much worse than the year before. But 5, 7, and 8 all had improved from the year before with the new introduction of the new curriculum. So we're encouraged about that, and we're hoping with stable staffing this year we'll see that trend in middle school for middle school mathematics turn around in response to sort of the new curriculum we've put in place. The next slide is our science results. And they show a similar pre-post blue to gold drop over the course of COVID. And we've seen some, the 5th grade results are pretty steady over the last 2 years. 8th grade dropped a little, and we've seen a rebound in the high school biology scores since our post-COVID low. And we got to remember, I put the indicator in there, that the high school biology test changed substantially in 2022. So that was MCAS 2.0. It was a much more challenging test, and statewide you see that big drop-off between pre-COVID and 2022 as well. But again, this is an area where we're starting to turn around and move in a positive direction. So those were our overall results in terms of how we did before COVID. Next, I'd like us to talk a little bit about how we're doing in comparison to the state. So in the next slide, one more. You can see here our 2023 performance in comparison to the statewide percent of students who are meeting exceeding expectations. And you can see that at every grade level, we're either at or above, in some cases, the state average in terms of the proportion of students who are meeting or exceeding. So even though our performance in most cases is still lower than it was before COVID, we are still exceeding the state, or at least meeting the state in most areas. And particularly you can see those big differences in elementary ELA and math, where we're far exceeding the state performance, and in high school biology. Those are the strong points in our performance at the moment. I did want to point out, in the next slide I didn't want to spend time on, but it does show you that one thing that happened to us over the course of COVID and the 1 or 2 years post-COVID you can't really see this very well, but we've lost ground in our competitive advantage over the state. Because historically, we did 10 to 15 to 20 points better than the state in terms of the proportion of our kids who are meeting exceeding expectations. But that advantage over the state, if you compare the earlier 2019 map on, or 2019 graph on the left to the 2023 graph, you see that particularly at middle and high school, with the exception of high school biology, that advantage has really shrunk. And that's something that's of concern and that we need to pay attention to. The next series of graphs just sort of map that difference from the state over time. So you can see in elementary ELA, we were well above the state in 2019 prior COVID, then we dropped, we were much closer to the state in the middle of the pandemic, and we've started to turn the corner again. At middle and high school, the pattern has continued to be a downward trend in terms of our relative advantage to the state since the beginning of COVID. Again, that 2021 was that strange half COVID or half MCAS year, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that our students, and I think I reported this during COVID and when those initial results were coming out, our students were losing ground, but they were losing a lot less ground than students statewide. So relatively, we did better during COVID than the state, which dropped a lot more. But now we face, I think, a somewhat different challenge. And on the next slide, you see a fairly similar pattern for middle and high school in mathematics. Our advantage relative to the state has been declining over time. Elementary math is going in the other direction, where our performance relative to the state, we were, I think, 1% below the state in terms of performance back in 2019, and now we're 15 points above the state last year in terms of the proportion of our students who are meeting or exceeding expectations in math. And then the final one of these in this series is the science results. And again, you see a similar pattern for middle and high school, sort of slight drops, or for middle school, and, or no, this is middle school because the one is 5th grade. I can't see from here. I think blue is 5th grade, red is 8th grade,
yep.
And the high school biology, again, has rebounded and is up to, approaching where it was before COVID. Not quite there yet, but still on an upward trajectory in terms of difference from the state. Okay, so what are our takeaways from our MCAS results this year? And again, you see the pattern over middle school and high school. In most areas, there's this kind of decline in our performance, which is of concern. But I think we have to be really careful about making overly generalized or simple explanations for that change. It's not just one thing. It's not a change in the high school schedule. It's not bigger class sizes. It's not staffing reductions. It's not the quality of instruction in this department or that department. I think there's something larger going on because we're seeing it as a very consistent pattern in our secondary grades. So and that's something we'll address in a minute. And then I think that another lesson to take away is that, what the elementary school is showing us, particularly in elementary mathematics, is when we make those investments in a high-quality curriculum, a strong Tier 2 system of support, strong support for our teachers to learn and implement these high-quality curriculum, we can make a difference in student outcomes. So I think that that's something that, we can take and learn from as we move forward. And, so let's go on to the next page then. Next slide, please. So in our department, the things that we're going to continue to do to try to improve student learning is to continue to support that implementation of our new K-8 math curriculums. Again, we're just entering our 3rd year in elementary, we're entering our 2nd year in middle school, and those teachers can still use additional support and coaching to really get to know the new programs and make sure that we're implementing them in ways that are benefiting students. And we have a committee this year that's working to select or recommend a new ELA curriculum for grades K to 5, which spans the elementary schools and the very early middle school. Our target is to begin implementing some parts of a new program. We're piloting 4 different curricula this year throughout those grade spans. And even though you might say, well, the big problems or the big areas for improvement seem to be at middle and high, why are you focusing on elementary? It's because we feel like we really need to build those strong foundations in elementary. Just like we are in elementary mathematics, I think we need to really build a strong foundation so that when kids make that transition from learning to read to reading to learn and entering middle school, they're really prepared for the level of challenge and expectation that a really robust middle school curriculum will be able to offer them. So that's why we're concentrating on that. Okay. And then the last bit we wanted to share with you was about the accountability system for the state. So you can go on to the next slide. So again, as I said, in 2018, I think, so the state changed to this new accountability system. And basically the way it works is the state keeps track of those 6 indicators and has a formula by which we're awarded points against our performance on each of these indicators. So every year they look at our performance, they set an improvement target for us, and then depending on how close we get to an improvement target, we earn points. And then all those points are added up, and there's a weighted average, and what comes out of that is an accountability score. So if we go to the next slide. So there's a couple different ways that they look at our accountability. So overall, of all the possible points you could have earned in improving in all those 6 indicators, in 2018, which was the first year of this new system, we earned 57% of all the possible points at the district level. In 2019, so they gave us 2 numbers, because ultimately they want to look at that across a 2-year span and look at your points as a rolling 2-year average. So they were kind of starting that in 2019. That year we only earned 26% of our possible points in 2019. And if you looked at the average of 57 and 26, and they don't weight them equally, the 2-year score was 37%. Last year at the district level, we earned 49% of all the possible points we could have earned, which puts us in that moderate progress toward our targets category. So that's the one way, and they call this the sort of criterion referenced accountability measure. And for a district to actually meet their improvement targets, they would need to earn 75% of their possible points. So just keep that in mind as we move to the next slide. So one of the pieces of good news in all this is when we looked this year at our low-income students and our student with disabilities in the K-8 grade span, they earned, respectively, 74 and 72% of all their possible points, which is terrific news, because they outperformed students overall, which means we're actually closing gaps for those students, which is what we want to be doing. So that was excellent news. The other way that DESE looks at this, and this to me is not nearly as meaningful as the first measure, is once all that accountability criterion stuff is done and they figure out what percent of your possible points you've earned, what they do is they take all the schools that are in a similar grade span and they rank them, right? So for example, Clark ranked better than 40% of all the elementary schools in terms of their possible points. And if you look at Clark is the only school independently that earned like 75% of their points. So they did the best in terms of their progress toward their improvement targets, but in terms of their overall ranking in the state, they were in the 40th percentile. Stanley was in the 64th, Hadley was in the 83rd percentile among elementary schools, the middle school ranked 56th, and this high school ranked 64th. So in and of themselves, because again, everybody's criterion of reference could be a very small range. So we don't even know. Well, I mean, I'm sure we could do research and figure out, like, how big is that range? And then they're squishing all the schools in that range into a ranked order, on a 100% scale. So it's not as meaningful in terms of anything, except it does point out to me how important it is that we're moving to one elementary school, because it really points to the inequities in our schools in terms of, Clark is improving faster and more strongly than the other schools, and yet in elementary schools, they're in the 40th percentile. So we really need to get everybody in one school to make common opportunities and common outcomes for kids across the different demographics. So I think, so one other thing that just happened this morning that I was going to add that's not in the presentation. I was at a conference, a family engagement conference today with some families from Swampscott and some fellow educators. And one of the things that came up at the conference, the commissioner of education was there, and he was talking about his big concern about chronic absenteeism. and he was pointing out that chronic absenteeism across the state, which is one of those 6 things that figures into our accountability, is way up since the pre-pandemic. So it went up, for obvious reasons during the pandemic, but it hasn't come down. And he was sort of warning us about that and enlisting family supports and educator supports to help try to address chronic absenteeism, because he also had a chart up there where it showed the difference in MCAS outcomes between kids who are chronically absent, which means you've missed 10% or 18 days or more of school during the school year. The difference in MCAS performance from chronically absent kids to non-chronically absent kids. And the difference was by grade span and across both English and math was around 25%. So if you're not chronically absent, 25% more of you. So if 56% of the kids who are not chronically absent met or exceeded expectations, then only 20 some odd percent. I can't do it. I should have said 50 and 25. Then my math would have been easier in my head. Then only 25% of the kids who are chronically absent are meeting or exceeding expectations. So that's a huge impact on student outcomes. So as I was coming into the meeting, I was just looking up our statistics to see how we compared. And before the pandemic, in our K-8 schools, the year before the pandemic, 8% of our kids were chronically absent in the K-8 grade span, and 19% were chronically absent at high school. And 2023, now after the pandemic, 16% of our elementary students were still chronically absent, so double the rate before the pandemic, and 26% of our high school students are chronically absent, which statewide it's around 25% of elementary, middle, high, about 25% of the kids in the state are still chronically absent. So this is a huge issue that I thought I would just share tonight, since it's right on my mind, and something I think we can also, and again, if you dig down into our accountability results, one of the good things, like the high school had amazing, I was just looking at high school right before we came in, amazing reductions last year in the proportion of kids who are chronically absent. And I've seen that because I've been sitting with the principals and going through their accountability data, and I've noticed that at many schools, that chronic absenteeism is one area where we are making really good strides. So just keep up the good work, everybody, on that, because it'll really impact student learning. So I think that's it, if anybody has any questions.
Questions from the committee?
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Bacon, as usual. I'm wondering, do you see these results matching other assessments or what the teachers are seeing in the schools in these same areas? Because MCAS is not the only thing we want to look at, right? So does it match what people are seeing otherwise, if that makes sense?
I mean, I've looked at also like the iReady results, and they're pretty consistent. Like when I look at elementary iReady results, I'm seeing really good year-over-year progress in terms of the proportion of kids who by the end of the year are meeting grade level. So it's telling me the elementary performance is improving. I'm seeing because you only do that from K to 8. Mm-hmm. The middle school, it's more mixed. There's some areas of improvement, there's some areas of non-improvement. So it's not as consistent a picture or a pattern. And maybe you can speak, both of you can speak to what you're hearing from teachers about how they feel students are doing in their recovery from the pandemic.
Are we seeing grades matching these trends, or do we know? Do we look at that?
To be honest with you, I think priorities changed as well. I mean, so we were just talking about this in the English department meeting last week about, we were looking at our scores and what we can do. And I do think that, mental health has become a priority, as it should be. I think after the pandemic, the middle school kids were coming back ready to date. Like that was we had more breakups and get-togethers than it was like we were an absolute dating game. So I actually, to Dr. Bacon's point about how last year was our first real year of school, I feel personally this has been the first year since post-COVID that we look like school again. You walk through the hallways, there's less distractions in the hallways, there's less people coming out of class, going to see counselors. I mean, we still have that, don't get me wrong, but it looks like school again. So I think there's a combination of when COVID hit and how it's impacting where they are now. I think it's the priority from families that I think obviously families want their kids to do well, but they want them to be balanced a little bit more than I saw before. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I think that you know, we're kind of pushing the independent reading. We're pushing, you'll see when I talk about the math, how we're trying to create more hours in school for math, because you don't have a ton of kids staying after school, unless Maddie Moran gives them pizza, which that does happen. You know, they'll come in pockets, but it's really, you know, after progress reports because somebody told them they had to.
Right.
You know, which I do think is a little bit different shift than what we saw before.
Okay.
So.
I think in some cases it does, and it's not a surprise, sadly, but it's too soon to say. So our department chairs on the meeting on November 8th are going to do like a deep dive on the MCAS results. So they have reports that Dr. Bacon was able to dig up, I was able to get. There's a lot on the DESE website, and they're going to go through at the subject level, look at roster scores, and try to do a little bit of that root cause analysis, but I don't think they're going to be able to determine what exactly happened right away. It's going to take some time to look at it, but I think, yeah, in some cases for sure, but in other cases we don't know yet.
Right. Okay. I just wonder that, you know, do we see math scores going down in MCAS, but the math department's like, no, but the kids are learning and they're doing great on the tests in school, in class, and they're passing and they're doing well. Like, does it?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I do think the kids are learning and passing, and I'm going to talk about how we have more kids taking algebra now than ever before. We have 66 kids taking algebra in the 8th grade. That's amazing. It's all good things. The kids that want to be challenged. Again, because I was in the English department meeting, I think it's interesting. We looked at last year's essays. It was like 46% of the kids wrote like 2 sentences or less. Obviously, they don't do that during this school year when they're turning in a report or typing something with a rubric. So it is just sort of, you know, it's tough to control that piece as well.
Right.
But we're working on it. We're coming up with a system and working on it, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm more interested in what you guys think is happening in the schools and what the teachers think than just what MCAS tells us.
Yeah, I think strangely, I know this happened last year and a little bit this year, where we were very concerned about biology because of what bio teachers were reporting, and they did well.
Right.
I don't know what that means, but.
So they were reporting it worse than it was.
Yeah, so then that's the opposite of what it, yeah.
And I do think, I mean, Dr. Bacon and I kind of talked about this, and I don't know, this is just a hunch, but those biology classes are a real exemplar for the rest of the building in terms of how well they are paced. Their assessments are very, in terms of their timing, they're very similar. There's less sort of variability than there may be in some of the other subjects. Now, I don't know for sure, but I do know that's a thing that's happened in biology for years, and maybe that sort of consistency among those classes has led to these results.
Excellent. Thanks.
I had a couple. Thank you, Dr. Bacon, for the presentation. So I don't know if it's good or bad for you. I happen to love going through this stuff, so I have a couple questions, a couple observations. So one thing is I'm reacting to something you said, and I just want to see if I heard it correctly. You said something around, and I wasn't able to write down the whole list, but something about the class sizes, the schedule changes. You know, you were trying to attribute some of the reasons for this. So were you saying that none of that impacted these, or I'm just trying to understand what you meant by that list?
No, what I'm trying to say is sometimes I hear people attributing, you know, issues to like one cause or one simple, straightforward cause, and it's not that simple is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, we're having a meeting next week to look at impacts of the high school schedule on learning, and you know, I'm working with Mr. Kohut to collect some data to really can help us answer whether that is a factor, right? So we have to do that root cause analysis. We can't just, there's not easy solutions. You just can't point to one thing without really diving in and saying, well, is it true? Could it be this? What data can we look at? What evidence can we look at to help us decide whether this is a cause or not? And so we just need time to do that work before we, you know, jump to solutions which may or may not work because we haven't taken the time to really do that thoughtful analysis to figure out what's contributing to this trend. Because and Mr. Kohut and I were talking the other day, it's like high school biology is a standout, right? It's not following the pattern that we're seeing. You know, in middle school, if we disaggregate those math things, we see very different patterns. What happened in the 6th grade last year, and we know why that happened, and it was, you know, versus what's happening in the other grades in response to the new math curriculum. So I just want us to be thoughtful so that we really can solve these problems and not jump to conclusions about what, you know, what different issues might be contributing.
So as far as, I like, you know, when I saw root causes here, I made a bunch of notes here, and, you know, I think that's great that you're gonna look at root causes and Principal Kohut's involved. What I didn't hear, I heard we're gonna look at data, we're gonna do some other types of analysis. What I didn't hear is, hey, we're gonna talk to the students, we're gonna talk to the teachers, maybe parents if you wanted to, but, you know, I would think for sure the students and the teachers, I don't know if that's on your radar to talk to them, because, I mean, anecdotally, I've heard things like, you know, just, again, going back to your list about the schedule and, you know, I'm thinking AP classes in particular, you know, this challenge to squeeze it all in, you know, so, you know, if part of the root cause analysis to actually, you know, hear from the people who are, you know, kind of living it day to day, I think that would be super helpful. And I guess just the other thing, just on, you know, you said you want to be thoughtful and take your time. I guess, you know, how much, you know, and again, I'm not saying, you know, artificial deadlines or anything else, you know, anything like that. I guess, you know, I think people would be interested to know, you know, as parents of children here, it's like, well, gee, I don't want my kid to like not benefit from your root cause, but it's going to take 2 more years, that type.
No, I mean, we're talking like, you know.
Can I just jump in here? I mean, it's very clear that the school committee members have heard about the high school schedule.
Right.
As a result, I've been tasked with bringing the high school schedule before the committee as a whole. This is part of a conversation, and the work that's going to happen next week, we wanted it to happen this week, but because of schedules it didn't. We're doing that work and investigating on all of these issues to figure out the schedule, talking to teachers, doing a survey, bringing that before the committee. So schedule aside, I think it's important to talk about class sizes. It's important to talk about the reduction in staff we did in the budget cuts last year. So the schedule is just one piece, but I want the committee to know, we know that you want to hear about it and parents are coming to you about it, and therefore this is the work that we're doing before we come to the committee. So I just think it's important to say that we've been tasked with it, we're doing the work, and we'll bring that forward.
No, I think that's great, and again, like I said at the beginning, I think kind of the framework you've outlined here is the right, it sounds like the right steps. One more question. One of the slides you talked about Swampscott compared to the state. It was, I think, the very first one when you did that.
Yeah,
And
second section.
it actually doesn't matter which one, but the note I made was, I was curious how Swampscott compares to, say, Marblehead or Linfield or Topsfield or Danvers. You know, the states, you know, that's, yes, it's useful, but maybe more useful to, you know, kind of, you know, what folks here expect, you know, those might be interesting results to see as well.
Well, especially with the work that we did with the teachers union to identify what
That's exactly what I was thinking.
what those districts are to compare ourselves to.
The peer group, right?
I agree 100%. It would be interesting to see how the peer groups, how we are to the peer groups. I think as you start to look at those results, that may prompt more questions, actually.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So.
I think I appreciate what Karen said, like that this is one measurement of a student, and you know, we have this conversation all the time, and I think that just take results. I mean, it is so muddy, like that. MCAS 2.0 is in there, and then there's the pandemic in there, and then there's like a half a year of testing, and then there's one grade that's not tested, and it's just like, it's not exactly apples to apples and oranges to oranges year after year here, and I think it's hard. It's just like you wanna delve into it, you wanna understand it, and you wanna make it better, but the bottom line is like, if like I really am encouraged by Mr. Calichman saying,
Right.
This year looks like real learning, and students have said it too, like this feels like a real school year, you know, and it was just like, I mean, in my mind, there's just, there will be a jump next year, like it's sort of just like, it just feels like that will happen because it's just like a catch up, but I don't want to spend too much time, like my personal opinion is not spending too much time on this, because this is like a measurement and a point in time. It's a measurement how the kids are feeling on that particular day, whether they're gonna write 2 sentences or 2 paragraphs or whatever. It's sort of just like it's important, it's a data point, and it's a way to compare ourselves to other districts because everyone's taking the same test, but I think that it's really important. This district prioritizes some way of measuring, like that's some sort of, this is just in the list of things we're evaluating students and teachers with.
And it's not the only,
Well,
most
but
important.
can I just jump in here, because I've always appreciated that about this committee. Dr. Bacon comes before, or in the past, the principals have come before you and reported out on the MCAS results. But the makeup of this committee in my tenure has always been, this is one data point, and we have not taken this as the end-all, be-all. It is the iReady, it is the other assessments, the common assessments that we're doing throughout the grade levels. I don't want to go down the MCAS rabbit hole, because I will go back to the days when I was a teacher, and before the day started, depending on what happened with my students in the first hour of the day, I could tell you how they were going to do on the MCAS. It is exactly that. Who didn't have their medicine, who was up late last night, the night before, who had a terrible start to their day. And I was elementary school, but it was 5th grade. Who had a fight with their siblings or their parents before they came to school. There are so many factors to this one assessment that I appreciate what you said, and I appreciate what you said, that this is one measure. And I do anticipate next year that we're going to see change.
I was just thinking, when I walked in a little late, excuse me for that, but when those girls were speaking about mindfulness, right, I kept, like, and then I was listening to this conversation thinking the high school is doing poorly, and I was like, if all 3 of those kids didn't meet expectations, I would still think they are showing the vision of a graduate,
Right.
just by their presentation and their poise and their ability to do you know what I'm saying? It's just like there's
You can go first.
I
feel like I gotta
We're
jump
gonna
in
say
here.
the same
no,
thing.
but you know,
You
there's
got it.
there's
You got it.
something else to measure that.
Right.
I-
Actually, can I just?
Yes, please.
Before we lose the thought here, I appreciate what you said, Suzanne, and also the superintendent, about this being a data point, and I agree with that. You know, I think we all know that there's AP scores, there's SAT scores, there's, hey, how did the senior class do with college admissions? I mean, there's all kinds of, very, very specific data, maybe more, less specific, but I think, I don't want to just minimize this and dismiss it out of hand, which is, I just don't want that to happen. I think for me, what struck me is the mostly downward trends, and I think that's what was most concerning. So again, yeah, it's a data point in time, but the data, it is a data point. It's a state one, and so I just wanted to make that point as well. It's like not taking anything away from anything else that was said here, but that's really what the red flag for me was, the downward trend. So
Good.
But it's
Thanks,
not Swampscott alone, is what I would say.
So,
It's a result of a global pandemic, quite
so
frankly.
I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here. Mr. Calichman and I have talked about test scores like this over the years. And I have to say, my thinking has changed a little bit. And I appreciate what you said. But it's that downward trend that concerns me. And not just a downward trend, but a downward trend comparatively that concerns me. I am glad, because I wrote down the same note you did about, like, is this educators, is this the curriculum, is this the class sizes, are these schedule changes? I also heard it's none of these things, so I was glad to hear you qualify that. I would argue it's all these things. That it is like you can't, there's no bullet of, one particular thing that causes this. I have to say it does concern me when I look at this, and while I appreciate the idea that we can look at these students and say, like, this is a successful student, and I know all 3 of those girls. I think they're fantastic, and I think that they're going to do great things in life. But I also think if they're a doctor, or if they want to be a doctor, are they going into college ill-prepared with their math skills? Or their, clearly not their biology skills, which is great. So happy about that. So, there are hard skills that these kids need to learn. And here's the thing, you know it more than anybody as a former classroom teacher, superintendent, but the thing is about these numbers is that they are comparative to the state, and in classrooms across the state are kids who haven't eaten that morning or who fought with their parents that morning. And so we have those same kinds of problems that every other district has. So I would be curious to see how it is comparative to specifically the districts that we like to compare ourselves to. So one thing that I heard, Dr. Bacon, when you were speaking, when you directly addressed the fact that the curriculum was changing in the K through 5 ELA, you said something about, well, people might ask, why not the older grades? Well, I'm one of those people. And I would imagine, and I think that Mr. Calichman would concur, that there are a lot of parents, beginning with the parents the year that we narrowed the number of classes that we had in elementary school. One of the parents spoke before us last year. I feel like, and this might be more personal than it is my school committee role. So I'm trying to pick it apart. But it feels like I'm so happy for those kids to move forward, those little kids, and making sure that they are coming in and they're getting from the get-go the best of the best. But I am concerned about these kids in middle and high school. And I know that a lot of this has to do with budget. And Karen and I have spoken about this, and this idea that every year we get these MCAS scores and we move our resources around. And every year, when we can't grow our budget the way that it needs to be grown, we have, our super and our business office saying, we'll make it work because we have to make it work. So, in all of this is the money issue. And, you sit here and we have townspeople talking about how years in the past, the golden days of the schools. Well, I'm not sure they were so golden, but I think that there's something to be said for a downward trend and saying, are we on the wrong path by not having enough money as a town? And this is not a question anybody here can answer. Do we have all the best educators? Do we have the right curriculums? Do those kids from 5th grade through high school, are they, will they continue to reap the benefits of your insights as educators? And it worries me that they won't. I hope to God that to your points, or principals, that next year you are looking at this, but I get scared. Like, what if they don't? I don't know. That was a long way of saying I'm really concerned, and I know that this is one data point, but I'm really concerned.
No, I think the comparative thing is legit, right? Because we're comparing ourselves to people that are in the same boat, and comparing us to the state and seeing the downward trend is like, how are the other people in the state not also having that downward trend? Like, why are we having it in the state seems to be doing better?
Well, not better. We're still doing better than the state, but
our
relative advantage to the state doesn't seem to be trending in the direction. It's not. We haven't seen a recovery of the advantage that we enjoyed prior to COVID, except at the elementaries, where we've made very specific investments in things that research tells us actually impact student learning.
Right. Jason, could I ask a follow-up to that? Could it be, in addition to all the things that you mentioned before, the fact that these kids didn't have that curriculum, that they didn't have that base set up? I don't know.
What they had was not a poor curriculum.
Right.
So, I think we're going down a rabbit hole here, and I think Dr. Bacon and her department and the principals, and we all have to have these conversations and circle back and give you information about the schedule. And we're going to be talking about budget situations, and we've already had those, and my heart is palpitating already. So I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. I'd rather focus on the other issues, but I do know Mr. Calichman wants.
I was just going to say, just to sort of answer your question, that you worry, like, I worry that maybe everybody else has it all wrong. Like, what are we prioritizing here? So I know we have kids who want to come to school every day, that are loved, cared for, they're learning, they're challenged. I'm really proud of that. And actually, the MCAS data that I'm going to talk about in a second will prove that. I would say, what would they do? The same thing people did before MCAS. They became doctors and lawyers and teachers and businessmen, whatever they wanted to be, and politicians. And do I want to be Marblehead in everything I do? Absolutely. Does this make me do I stay up at night worrying about MCAS? Absolutely not. I know our teachers are doing the very best that they can. Also, I come from a district before I was in, I won't say the district I worked in, but like, it was MCAS boot camp from day one. We don't do that. And I talked to Dr. Bacon about that. Like, we could.
We'll never do it.
We have to shift the way we're doing things, and I don't know if that's right. So I think that's another thing to consider as well. We used to, my one class a day was MCAS, prep. That was not good. And I don't want to be part of a school system that's...
Well, then I guess maybe it's incumbent upon us to do a better job of marketing, because we have an electorate that is concerned about these things. And so I love the fact that I love when I hear this, my principal saying, my kids want to come to school. Like, I feel good about this. I feel good about what they're learning. But how that translates out to the public doesn't necessarily translate.
But isn't the end game for all of this, right? So it's funny because like the same people that are worried about the MCAS so much also sends their kids to like the prep who don't take MCAS. So, or whoever, the prep. So it always sort of baffles me, like the same people that I'm arguing with then leave. But isn't the end game, not for everybody, but the end game in this discussion, like the schools kids are getting into from Swampscott High School. And if Northwestern and Cornell and UCLA and USC think we're fine, like that to me is the ultimate goal. So, we could talk about MCAS all night, but to me that's the end game. And when Dennis shows the parents on November 30th, that first slide that shows all the schools kids have gotten into over the last couple of years, and if I was sitting there as an 8th grade parent, I'd say, wow, all right, if my kid goes to Swampscott High School, look at what they can accomplish.
Well, it's also keeping track of alumni, which I think the guidance office is doing better. Where are they? How are they succeeding? Yeah. Are they staying in college? Those are the data points I want.
So you and I have talked about this. This is great, and MCAS is important, and I want to come back because I have a couple comments too. It's, my twin boys graduated in 2019, and it was 90 whatever percent. Mr. Kohut, I honestly don't remember, but it was obscenely high. Okay, it was really high. What percentage of those kids, even with COVID, and I know how hard it was in my household, did those kids graduate on time? If those kids graduated on time, where do they go? Are they going back to graduate school? Are they working, getting ready to go to graduate school down the road? I have it both ends in my house. I have one in graduate school, one who's working and then going to graduate school. So that's, and I agree with, and Superintendent and I have talked a lot about this over the years, is that data point, that's really important. I agree that, from a perspective of a district, we want to educate everybody. And whether their kids want to go to college, go to work, go to the armed forces, that's our job. Absolutely. End of story, end of the day, that's our job. Someone wants to go to American University in DC, they study hard, they apply, they go. Someone wants to go in the armed forces, whether it's West Point, whether it's regular armed forces, they go. Whether someone has this passion to go to work, we prepare them. So I agree with that. I have a couple questions for you. I'm going to kind of mirror here. Pardon me. I am a little worried about the trends. And I look at this, and as important as MCAS unfortunately is, and I agree. I don't want anyone teaching to the damn test. I just don't. That's frustrating. We've all talked about that. Superintendent, you and I talked about that when you were a principal yet. We don't want to raise that kind of student. We just don't. But I'm worried about some of the trends, and that's why I think it's so important that yes, we're doing a point in time on a state level. I'm really curious about how we're doing on those 11 or 12 districts, because to me that's more important. I have two questions, and I'm going to go back to one. The first one is chronic absences. Did I hear you correctly and say 26% of high school students are chronically absent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year.
Last year?
Yes, last year, 27%.
And what is
Which in 2019, it was 19%.
And what
So
does
it's
it
not-
qualify? Like, how do you
Yeah,
what makes
I'm
you
curious.
what
You're
qualifies?
absent more than 18 days a year. 18 days or more a year.
Wow.
Do we have a flavor of, and it's a very unfair question, I know you don't know the answer to it. Do we have a flavor of how we're doing now with high school kids through 8 weeks?
It's definitely better, but it's still a problem. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is. I know, like Dr. Bacon said, the state percentage is 25%. I think it's 29 for high schools. Wow. Colleen sent me the notes from
it's
today.
a little, those slides, yeah, it's a little bit higher.
So that's 25 for all schools, elementary, middle, all public schools, elementary, middle, high. It's 29 statewide for chronic. This was so bad that last year they changed the metric from 10% to 20%. Now they've sort of split it. So if you look at the DESI results, there's two columns. There's the 10% and there's the 20%. Right. But that's how bad it was. And so, yeah, this is a crisis. I think we could speculate about, what the reasons are for it. I think it's dropping for sure, as Dr. Bacon said, but it's still very high. It just feels like we never quite recovered in terms of kids coming to school after the pandemic. And there are a variety of reasons for that.
We closed schools for 2 years. I think we taught people, maybe not that
It's okay not to
important.
talk.
I'm sorry. I think that's true. As a society, we kind of said that, and now we have to re-teach them that you have to be here.
And then lastly, Dr. Bacon, I'm going to ask you the question that my colleague Amy asks all the time. If you could say to us, and budget money is not a problem, we can say to you, here's the chalice of money. What would you do to A, increase these scores, but B, increase the knowledge of our students? By the way, we don't have the chalice of money.
By the way, we don't have any money.
I mean, yeah, I think that the evidence from the elementary is showing us, and this is what all the research says, and this is why we went there, if you really invest in high-quality curriculum materials and put them in front of teachers and support teachers to implement them, and have a really strong, this is the stuff that's in this strategic plan, and have a really strong system of tiered supports for students who aren't going to get it the first time through with the gen ed curriculum, kids will learn, kids will do better. Right. Those are the things that really make a huge difference in terms of outcomes. And the other piece, again, on the heels of our parent engagement conference, really engaging our parents in ways that maybe we haven't engaged them in the past. And really looking at this as a partnership between schools and families to achieve what we want, everyone wants for their students, which is to learn and gain that knowledge and be prepared for what's next. So it's not about the MCAS scores.
Right.
It's about the MCAS scores indicating something, I think, that we should be paying attention to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Thanks for the comments about it. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bacon. You can leave. We've had a long day. Going back to my agenda, the next items on the agenda, I am going to respectfully ask that, I said this before the chair came in, and certainly it's not my meeting. This is a very heavily packed agenda, and I do want the students to leave after 2 hours. I know they have homework after sports and everything, and so when we hit 8 o'clock, I would like to give permission for Sam and Noel to leave. But we do have 3 school committee meetings in a row. We have this week, we have next week, and we have the following week. And I would like to prioritize tonight's agenda and perhaps push a few things off. I don't feel like we should be here till 9 o'clock. A 3-hour meeting is a lot for all of us, but obviously it's your meeting. So I'm going to continue. I think it's very important. Mr. Calichman and Mr. Kohut have been here to review a little bit of their school improvement plans from last year as we look ahead to the next several meetings. We know that the elementary, I've talked to I think all of you about the fact that we have formed one school council at the elementary level made up of all 3 elementary schools, and they were, which means there's about 18 members of that committee, and they were just starting to review budgets and look at goals, and they're all going to be starting to develop next year's school improvement plans between now and the spring. But this is a little bit of a summary from the middle school last year and the high school last year, where our elementary schools were all over the place. So Principal Calichman, if you'd like to start.
Yeah. Before we dive into that, can I just ask at the elementary level, which administrator is leading that? Which principal?
All the principals are leading it.
Okay.
We did a joint one because they'll be writing a school improvement plan for the opening of the school. And so I have requested that all the elementary principals be part of it. And then they have a community member, they have parents, and they have teachers. Great. And I know it's a large number, but all those voices have to be heard going into a new school.
Great.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So I have to say that the first picture on there is I'm going to get into our Big Blue Pride winners, but those are our September Big Blue Pride winners. We take that picture every month. They get their shirt, and I'll get into it later, but I love that was the first slide.
Well, remind the audience what a Big Blue Pride is.
So our Big Blue Pride we give monthly. So there's 10 teams in the middle school. It's essentially, 2 teams in 5th grade, 2 in 6th, 2 in 7th, 2 in 8th, the specialist rotation, then we do one for the main office. And Big Blue Prizes are the kids who represent our school well. They are consistently doing the right thing. They're not perfect, just consistently doing the right thing, trying to make our school a better place. They're the reason somebody wants to come to the school in the morning. They don't have to be the star of the show or the best athlete or the star of the math team. Just want to represent and recognize good kids. And we luckily have a school full of them. So, yeah. So we're going to the 3 priority areas that we have are school culture and belonging, student family engagement, and curriculum and instruction. That's what we're going to be tackling right now. A few other pictures happening here. So, like I said earlier, we want to develop a school. I want to develop a school that kids want to come to school in the morning every single day. I don't know if you remember 7th grade, but if we have 7th graders running to the door in the morning, wanting to come to class, we are winning. Mm-hmm. And to me, the most impressive data that came out of DESE was the vocal data, which after they test the kids at nausea, they then survey them and ask them how they're feeling. And our kids reported a sense of belonging in their school 4 times above the state average, which is a massive amount. It means kids want to come to Swampscott Middle School every single day because they know they're cared for, they know they're learning, and they're happy, generally speaking. So that data makes me think that maybe we are doing something right. And if chronic absenteeism is an indicator, our kids are going to come. They come into school. They want to be here every day. So I think that is something that should be celebrated. Every day I'm outside. When I'm not getting frustrated about people not pulling up all the way in the semicircle, I am greeting our students. Ms. Zotto is down at breakfast greeting our students in the morning downstairs in the cafeteria once they come in. We have a building-wide initiative that our teachers are greeting students at the door, not only before homeroom, but before every class. That little welcome makes kids know that they're cared about here. We started the year with surveys and classroom norms, and we are constantly reminding the kids on the announcements about that their words matter, and again, to those sort of be the reason somebody wants to come to the school in the morning, and who are you when nobody's watching? I mean, they're probably sick of me saying it, but the more you say it, we now have 8th graders, some of our Big Blue Pride winners, some of our NJHS students, just 8th grade leaders. I've heard them in the hallway saying, hey, we don't do that here, we don't do that here. And I'm like, am I, is that me? But they're taking ownership in it, which I love. So one of the things that we started a few years ago was 3 times a year we have grade level sort of respect and safety meetings. So not only were we going over our protocols for fire drill, lockdown, evacuate, we also talked to them explicitly, especially in the 7th and 8th grade, we talked to them explicitly about cell phones and what happens if you send a nasty text or post something on Instagram or Snapchat. What are the repercussions for that? And we always say, I'm not saying it to threaten you, I just want you to know. So we've ramped those up, so we do it 3 times a year as a constant reminder of the expectations that you are going to be a student here. This is sort of the level of conduct that we expect. We have those meetings at lunchtime, we have them during advisory. We are constantly talking about the social expectations, which is huge in middle school, as you know, how we're treating each other, how we're treating the students who are not necessarily in our friend group. And also pride in their work as well. The Big Blue Pride we talked about already, but we do it for 10 months. The PTO buys the shirts. They're nice stretchy material, and so the kids want them. It's not like something they're just going to chuck away. They wear them all the time. I love coming to the high school sometimes and seeing kids wear them still. It makes my day. You can go to the next slide. So, no, mine's not working. Okay. So we're trying to be intentional about not only their daily experience, but also the spaces in the building. We had a huge emphasis on Heritage Months that started in our first Hispanic Heritage Month. Jess Massap, our 8th grade Spanish teacher, and a bunch of kids sort of ran with it. We had morning quotes every morning from students, the morning songs. We have signs in the hallways in different languages. We have the posters that we hang on the wall, the pictures that we get down our little wall of fame that we have. We want everybody to feel represented. And actually, that's come up when we started doing the tours with parents. That's come up several times from kids who are thinking about moving here or thinking of coming back from Tower or Charter. What we have on the walls, the music we listen to in the morning. I don't know if you know, we start every morning with the morning songs, so get the day going. It all matters. The books that we read. So our book club started last year. So we have 2 8th grade teachers, Ms. Zipper and Ms. Murphy, who every Tuesday they have book club in the library. And right now we have between 35 and 40 students talking about diverse texts, diverse authors, social justice issues, and we have student leaders that are bringing these things to the table. I mean, Ms. Angelakis has been there. Ms. Zipper and Ms. Murphy sometimes let the kids sort of run with it, but when you have 40 kids in a middle school wanting to come to the library to have book club, I think that says something as well. So what we're reading says a lot about us. We have our first GSA meeting next week. They'll have their annual open mic night. We had 107 kids on the cross-country team, which is massive. They went undefeated, by the way. The math team just beat Marblehead. Data point. When we have 5th and 6th graders on the math team, they're 7th and 8th.
Wait. Can I share that the day that he announced that our math team beat Marblehead, he just came in my office and said, anything can go wrong today when the math team beat Marblehead. I'm in such a good mood. These kids are going to get away with murder today.
Spoken like a Swampscott through it.
Well, I will say we went 3 years before COVID. We were 3 years undefeated, and then we had a youth movement, and then we're back on the climb. So.
Was the funniest.
Our after-school programs, we have Dungeons and Dragons, we have Taylor Swift Club, we have Dodgeball Club, Circuit Cricket Club, which I didn't know what that was. That's when you can design things on the cups and whatnot. Computer club, drawing club, volleyball, basketball, softball. I guess the point is, if it gets you out of bed in the morning, if that's the reason they came out, then we want to have that club. We want to have that, because you never know what a student's passion is. And if Taylor Swift bracelet making club with Miss Waffle after school is it, then let's do it. And our PTO is so wonderful that all we need, we have if 6 kids want to do it, they fund it, and that changes every marking period. We have our first 7th and 8th grade Halloween dance on Friday. We've never had a 5th and 6th grade dance, which comes up, but I'm just not quite willing to do that because.
But they're having an open gym.
So we are having an open gym with a DJ and generator. We did it last year. We had arts and crafts. They played volleyball. They ran around like crazy in circles, and the PTO sponsored it. I will say that it dawned on me last year that I thought the 7th and 8th graders would have loved it too. I really did. Like the pressure of the dance sometimes in middle school is intense. You laugh about it now, but for a kid, it's real. So we're talking about maybe even having a 7th and 8th grade open gym night as well. All right, next slide. So for student family engagement, we really wanted to focus on the students transitioning to Swampscott Middle School. So every year I go to the 3 elementary schools and Johnson School to talk to the 4th grade kids, to talk to the 6th grade Johnson School kids from Nahant. But we sort of amped it up a little bit. We then had 2 night events for the Nahant parents. We called every single family incoming in the 5th grade over the summer. Tell us about your kid. Welcome to Swampscott Middle School. If there's ever anything that you need, I'm here.
Every kid or
every kid coming into 5th grade. Every kid coming into 5th grade. Then we went to Nahant I said, well, why stop there? Then we went to any new student in the district. So that's 60 that's coming to the middle school. So that's 63 families we've called so far this year since August for students new to the district as well, who could have missed that. Beyond that, and I think that first phone call is so important, you know, so if something eventually I have to call for a reason that's not great, they've heard from me before. They know me. They know I care about their kid. They know that we just want what's best for everybody, and it softens the blow for when somebody got shoved at Foursquare. Okay. Obviously, Parent Square has been a huge addition for us. We have our weekly scoop, highlighting who we are, what we value, who we are as a school community. Mrs. Otto, I have to give credit on this one. Coffee with the Principals, she pushed me hard on it. I don't know, I'm a little old school sometimes. I probably, for those parents who have been through the middle school, like, I kind of kept you out, and I'm sorry now, I'm reflecting, and she wants them all in. So we had over 30 parents show up to Coffee with the Principal, and we're going to try to do it every 2 months. Our PTO, like I said, is thrive. We have people who their kids don't even go to the middle school anymore, but they still want to stay on our PTO, which is tremendous. We have a committed school council that, as you know, caused a little bit of a stir last year in budget season, but that's why I love them. You know, they are committed to this middle school, and now we have our middle school Instagram account as well.
I have no problem with it.
You can go to the next slide. Curriculum and instruction, so math intervention. So we piloted this, and now we're going to really run with it. So in 5th and 6th grade, we have created 140 additional hours of math throughout those 2 years. So you're almost getting like another full year of math between those 2 years in 5th and 6th grade. And we've leveled it this year, which was a debate that we don't have to get into right now, but we're going to see if it works. We're trying different things. So basically, like, our lowest students that scored on iReady, which also, you talk about data points, which changed, that was spring iReady. A lot of them changed from fall iReady. So again, these things are fluid, are getting most of it. So they're going to get a intense version of math into January. Targeted instruction. So what we used to have was reading in 5th and 6th grade because it was still elementary. It is still elementary. But what we decided to do with the math sort of deficit, let's really pump the math. And so our math and science teachers in 5th and 6th grade are now teaching math during that enrichment block, during that old reading block. When the kids rotate through, they go to their English and social studies teacher, that's when they're getting reading, if that makes sense. If I need to say it again, I will. Is everybody with me there? Mm-hmm. I know it's confusing, okay? So we're going to see how those interventions work in our favor too, all right, long term. I also think, you know, when you look at the middle school, I think you have to look at the whole picture. You know, you're getting Nahant now in 6th grade, which is great. Used to be 7th grade. You have new kids all the time. I love to see, 5th grade is not easy transitioning to the middle school. I like to see the overall picture and where are they in 8th. And our 8th grade scores have been they did really well. And speaking of 8th grade, this is just up for discussion, just something to consider. So, like I said before, we have 66 kids taking algebra this year. That is more than at any time in Swampscott Middle School history. I'll be quick with my little background information that we never used to allow overrides, and I was part of the problem. I would say, you didn't make the team, sorry. Like, this was the grade, you didn't hit it, sorry. And then, over the years, we started having discussions, and it was like, listen, we're a public school, we're trying to keep kids motivated. If they want the challenge, let's do it. So then I'd make the parents come in and sit with me, and it's just sort of evolved over the last couple years. Now, that is great. It's setting kids up for success in high school and beyond, and we have over a third of our class currently challenging themselves in algebra every single day. Where it's not so great is MCAS, because guess what's not on the 8th grade? MCAS, algebra. So we have our 66 top MCAS math students not taking a minute of 8th grade MCAS-related subject for the whole year, and they're still outperforming the state. Now, back to the point, if I wanted to get rid of algebra, do you think we'd go 20 points above the state? I bet you we would. Do I think that's the right decision? I absolutely don't. So that's just something for everybody to consider. One of the things that we talked about is sort of an MCAS boot camp situation. We're trying to incorporate during advisory, using Waggle, using Ed Puzzles weekly, so kids are sort of, you know, getting that additional time in math. But really, the ultimate thing to consider, and we haven't landed on this, and there's pros and cons, is going to an honors class in 7th grade that would sort of tackle those 8th grade standards. Beyond that, last slide, we have some pictures. If you ever want to click the link, we get a whole little, we have 1 million pictures in the SMS in action that you can look at your convenience.
Questions? Committee questions?
Wow.
I love how much you love your students. I just think it makes me smile. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is great. Yeah, the engagement, not only from you, but, the team and having, you've taken a school day, you've added extra hours for whether it's math, whether it's reading, whatever that is, and, you're trying something, and kudos to everybody there. I mean, you're right. At the end of the day, if the kids are happy walking in the door, give yourself a check plus. That's just everything you hear and you read. That's just not the case a lot. So if you have more days than not, I love the fact that teachers are, engaged, welcoming the kids in, because you're right. That first 90 seconds gonna make or break this whole school day. So great job. This is fantastic. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add, what came through for me, Jason, was your open-mindedness to, kind of evaluate and adapt, especially, what I heard was, kind of the override situation that you mentioned. I think you and I actually had a conversation about that a number of years back, and it was a positive outcome. And
did I reject you?
At first, but then you said okay, and it ended up working out great, and it worked out because the student wanted to do it. They pushed themselves, and giving them that opportunity, I think, was really important. So, I'm really glad to hear that. Again, you're keeping the open mind and making those adjustments where you need to. So, thank you for your presentation.
And so that plan was sort of like the culmination of things you instituted last year and before, sort of like.
Yes.
These are the things through the pandemic.
Right.
It's
In this
kind of
year,
like-
yeah.
Through the pandemic.
Yes,
Yeah.
this
No,
is
it's pretty
this
great.
is
And the
kind
kickoff
of
to this
There's just a lot of stuff. It's awesome.
this is a catch-up.
Yeah.
What they're presenting
Right.
is not just based on 1 year. I mean, some of these conversations Jason and I have in the early morning hours are things that have been on his mind that he's going to give a shot to, that he runs by Dr. Bacon, and that they hash out and they try to come to a decision. So I feel like tonight's presentations are catch-up, and they're going to see the goals, the district goals, the strategic plan. They know about that, and moving forward, we'll all be on the same page.
No, it's pretty awesome.
Nice job.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's all the good stuff.
And this
that
is the
I
stuff
know
that's
is
been
happening.
missing for several years
Right.
because of the state.
Yeah, we're all behind on it.
Yeah.
I'm just so blown away by that report, that
I'm really-
the
yeah.
kids who show up, the kids who, at the end of the MCAS,
The vocal data.
the vocal
So, I
data.
mean, imagine if they did that before they tested them, right? So with 8th graders, they're taking 4 MCAS, right? And the windows are tight. What they don't factor in a lot of the times, I don't think Desi does, a 5 to 8 school. So you have to do English first, then math, then science, and now we're adding civics. It's a lot of testing. So then for them to say, like, we still actually like coming here at the end of it,
Right.
I just think it's ironic that they survey them after they drill them, so. Yeah.
I think
All
I
right.
appreciate all the communication that you do with the families, and that's really impressive, all those phone calls, to just keep those lines of communication. Like, over-communicating is better than under-communicating, and it's like unbelievable.
But those phone calls were impressive this year. It was a goal that
Really
you had.
unbelievable. That's like, I would love to come to a district and have someone call me and say, welcome to the district, and not just send my kid blindly to a new school.
They don't do that at private school.
Right. No, it's great. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm watching the clock, Sam and Noel. Do you want to stay for the high school presentation and then skedaddle, or was this a good time for you to skedaddle?
It's up to you. You can. No.
Go through the high school presentation,
Okay.
and then you guys skedaddle.
All right. I think Sam and Noel did such a great job with the report of this week, but you both left out some key information that this was Spirit Week. but I know why you left that information out, because I have to say, I think the most spirited people in the building were the staff.
Yeah.
There were some creative, today was Barbie versus Oppenheimer. There were several
Nice.
creative, mine was easy to dress like someone from Oppenheimer, but there were several Barbies that were very impressive. One student really stood out. And then, let's see, earlier this week, we had Twins Day.
Did you tweet that twin day with the staff?
Miss Finn and I were
good.
twins.
Okay, yeah.
We were committed.
Yeah.
90s Day, there was a lot of flannel. Monday was, what was Monday? Country versus Country Club, so I wore a cowboy hat. I mean, but I understand why the both of you didn't mention this, because I think we were probably a little wondering what's happening with the staff while they were. So I took kind of a different approach for this presentation. So this is the school improvement plan that we developed in 2020 that ended in 2023. So I'm going to go through that and talk about sort of where we are in terms of our progress. And like Superintendent Angelakis said, based on her goals, we'll develop the next school improvement plan. So the way and I have a document here that's linked to this, that's the actual school improvement plan, but this was the way we had organized these back in 2020. So we had this theory of action, right? So if we provide multi-tiered systems of support, and I define that here, incorporate social emotional learning into our curriculum and develop our cultural competency, we will improve student learning. If we also develop a complete curriculum in all classes rooted in our vision of an SHS graduate, we will improve student learning and improve our school climate. Finally, if we create a professional culture that demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement through the use of research, collaborative learning, innovation, and reflection, we will improve student performance. So context-wise, if you remember back in 19, we had the NEAS collaborative conference visit, right? So NEAS came out and they helped us develop goals. So some of these goals came based on their recommendations, and then when they came again for the decennial visit in 21, they sort of checked in on where we were related to these goals. In fact, I think all of these line up with the NEAS recommendations. So next slide. So this was our vision for 2023, a school that works towards students meeting our vision of the graduate. The first part of that is that we want every SHS graduate to have the opportunity to be prepared for success in college and or be prepared for a career. We want every Swampscott High School student to feel safe enough to take intellectual risks in an inclusive and supportive environment. We want most of our students to have the opportunity to enroll in at least one high-level AP course, and we want every student to be prepared for post-secondary life emotionally and socially. Next slide, these are our specific strategic objectives. So as I go through this, I'll walk everyone through the strategic objectives and our progress towards meeting those goals. The first one was to provide a multi-tiered systems of support, incorporate student social emotional learning, and develop faculty, staff, and students' cultural competency in order to improve student learning. So when we talk about MTSS, I think we often focus on the academic side of things, and that is important, right? But MTSS is also a method, a framework of organizing counseling support for kids as well. So we've structured our counseling support here to align to that MTSS framework. And we know, right, we're dealing with this youth mental health crisis right now. And it's not just us, this is national. The Surgeon General called it the defining public health crisis of our time. Our hope in setting up counseling the way we have and some of the other groups that we have within the building in which our counselors are working with kids is to be able to provide that support for all of our kids. I think adding counselors over the course of the pandemic was crucial. The next strategic objective is to provide a comprehensive curriculum in all subjects and subject areas, to improve student learning. Create a professional culture that demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement through the use of research, collaborative learning, innovation, and reflection. And of course, to create a written vision of a Swampscott graduate. Next slide, please. So before we get into this, I think we have to address the elephant in the room. The elephant walked in about an hour ago, and that is, of course, the pandemic, right? So this plan is developed in 19 and 20, rolled out, I think, right before the pandemic. These are my these are my goals for this high school, and of course the pandemic happens, right? I'm very proud of the work that we did here in this building in order to work toward these goals. It wasn't just the staff. I mean, staff were a big part of it, but also we had a lot of contributions, particularly with the Vision of the Graduate, from kids, from families, from community members in helping develop this. And I think we did a lot of this work in this room, and we were all 6 feet apart wearing masks. If someone could click that top link where it says progress, yeah, this is so this is the actual document. And if you scroll down to that first goal 1 there, sorry, keep going. Yeah, right there. So on the way it was set up was we had our strategic initiatives on the left, the outcomes, and then I added progress on the right. So under goal 1, and this is that MTSS goal, the SEL goal, and the cultural competency goal, the first strategic initiative was to develop a master schedule aligned to an MTSS framework. We did that. So we, of course, have our Bell schedule. It's hyperlinked on the right. I think we're all familiar with the Bell schedule. The MTSS piece of that for the Bell schedule is, of course, the X block, right? But also within that is LC, is the learning community, and that addresses social emotional learning. If we click on the next link that says MTSS and counseling services, this is how we've aligned our counseling services here in the building to fit that MTSS framework. So we have that first tier, and this is really everyone is getting this, right? So these are our school counselors, along with things like learning community. All kids are in learning community. We have mental health screening for all students. We have expert screening. We have counselor seminars. We have the health curriculum, and then any sort of special events where we may bring in like a guest speaker, for example. All kids get that experience. And then we go up to the more sort of tiered things where we have groups for specific things like anxiety or depression, right? We have specific SEL groups. We have our counselors, those are their caseloads, so Ms. Sturma, Ms. O'Neill, and Ms. Mazzola, and they're doing that holistic case management. They're checking in on kids. And then for more acute situations where students are struggling even more, they're offered that additional support by our adjustment counselors. So we have Ms. McDonald, Ms. Kelly, and Ms. Calabrese. And the way we've organized it is a little bit different this year. In the past, Ms. McDonald was associated only with the SWIFT program, which is for that Tier 3 support for students who are out of school. However, and Ms. Calabrese, was associated with Harbor, so she was working with students in Harbor. That meant that Ms. Kelly had all of the other students who needed additional support. That didn't make sense. So we've spread it now, and they're in teams. So they're in these sort of triangles where they're working with the school counselor and a school psychologist to provide more counseling support, and it divides up the workload. We still have SWIFT, but it's divided up a little bit now in terms of what that's going to look like for those additional supports, because that is incredibly time sensitive, and it's a ton of work for those Tier 3s, and it never made sense for that all to fall onto one staff member. We could go back to that first goal at column. I'll just go through these. Thank you. So we were at the time doing a lot of work with the ECLC. There are people in the building still doing that. I know Mr. Franklin grabbed me at the volleyball game. He went to an ECLC workshop today. Our goal back then was to train staff in MTSS. And of course, because of things that happened during the pandemic socially in our country, we pivoted to core, right? And that was the right move, and it absolutely makes sense. And I think a lot of the core goals overlap with MTSS. And I also think that sort of there isn't necessarily a training piece with MTSS. Like, we have the framework. People now know during X block I can provide these interventions, or I can have kids go to counseling or different levels of counseling for different types of supports. We've embedded it into the instructional model. The outcome here, the goal at the time, was by the end of 23, tiered interventions would result in 80% of high-need students meeting or exceeding expectations on math and English MCAS. We didn't hit that, right? But it is embedded. We hit it in a sense that it's embedded in our model. We have now MTSS and X block. We have enrichment for math that we didn't have that before. We have counseling reorganized to meet that MTSS model. The other goal that was there at the outcome was by the end of 23, tiered interventions will result in 90% of students earning a C or higher in courses, so that's end of year grade. We didn't meet the goal, but it was 85% earned a C or higher, so we were close. The next part of this is the culturally competent framework. We wanted to have all curricula developed within that framework. This is a big project, right? It's part of the core training. It takes time. This is a 2-year process, really, for all of our staff to go through that core training, the seed work, and also to be developing curriculum to be culturally competent comes out of that. It's not something that can just be done sort of overnight, and we're in year 2 of that, and we're starting to see that happen with curriculum where Dr. Bacon has developed a system for reviewing curriculum, right? Before it makes it into the classroom, there's a very thorough process for making sure and vetting curriculum, making sure that materials are culturally competent. Other goal was to further develop co-taught classes. We've met that. We have co-taught classes in all the core content areas in ELA, math, and in science. Our teachers right now, our co-teachers, many of them are veteran co-teachers. Some of them are new to district. They are engaged in a PD workshop that goes on throughout the year. We have a consultant coming in and teaching different elements of co-teaching to all 20 of them. So everyone who co-teaches, so that's a gen ed teacher plus a special educator, they're going through this throughout the year. We've talked a little bit with the instructor about having her go in and then observe them teaching during the school day to be able to give them feedback about co-teaching, because typically when we observe classrooms, we're going in there to observe one teacher based on whatever that is, whatever's scheduled. We're not typically talking about the co-teaching. We're talking about one teacher. This is going to be specific to how they're working through the co-taught model in those classes. The next one is develop teacher and staff development of SEL competencies. So at the time, the thinking was, and I think Mr. Franklin kind of alluded to this, was to have SEL taught in every class by every teacher. Pretty ambitious. What did I know? First year principal, right? We pivoted, and now I think we've shifted our focus, and now SEL is taught to every kid through learning community. Every kid takes LC, every kid goes through LC, it's standardized, the themes are the same, but we're not in a place where we can expect all staff to be explicitly teaching SEL. I really think it's like a 3 to probably 5-year process of getting people there. It's a comfort level. Most teachers are very comfortable with their own subject matter. They're not necessarily comfortable teaching about social emotional learning. Further develop a growth mindset among students and staff. I think we've accomplished this, but we didn't do this by the outcome that I listed here. And at the time, what we were having kids do was to go through this PERTS training that Stanford University offers. It's really thorough. It's completely free, all online. It involves surveys, and it teaches kids about growth mindset, and then it comes back and surveys them again. We started this with the 9th graders in 2019, and then, of course, some things happened, and we had to shift. However, growth mindset is one of our competencies for our Vision of the Graduate, right? That didn't just come out of nowhere. It's something that teachers are not necessarily explicitly teaching, but they believe in it. I think the jury's still out about whether or not you can teach growth mindset, but I think we can communicate with kids and give feedback in ways that can help develop a growth mindset. So we're still addressing that, but in a different way from the way I originally thought we would do it through this PERTS model, which I think is great, and maybe we could go back and revisit it. It just, during the pandemic, it didn't really make sense to say, kids, while you're home, I also want you to do this growth mindset thing. We just wanted to be connecting with kids in some way. We've already talked about this, chronic absenteeism, but our goal was to provide a targeted intervention model to improve student attendance. We do have a targeted intervention model. We wanted to have a goal of reducing chronic absenteeism by 10%. We definitely made progress that year. I had pre-pandemic, we were at 14, although Dr. Bacon said we were at 19, so I could be wrong. And then it jumps up to 34% in 2021, 31%, and then down to, at the end of last year, 26%. So again, that's the chronic absenteeism rate. But the statewide trend, and I think I said this earlier, is that more than 75% of schools have high chronic absenteeism. And in high schools, it's 29%. Pre-pandemic, it was 13. So we know this is a statewide trend. It's a national trend. It's not just unique to Massachusetts. But some of the things that we've done that have been helpful, and I want to give a lot of credit to Ms. Finn because this is really her focus on absenteeism. One is the buyback program. So this idea that if a student misses time, we want them to earn back that time in a constructive way. So, okay, you've missed X number of classes, you now owe X amount of minutes. You need to come in, make that up. That could be during vacation. We've done that, and kids have done it, and they've been given work by teachers, and they've earned back the time. So rather than failing the class, they can earn some credit for that. Incentives, we've offered all sorts of different things to get kids to come in, open campus, for example, gift cards. And then this idea of anchor adults, and Jason spoke to this a bit too, about wanting kids to be connected to the adults in the building. That's another goal of LC, is to have one person in the building where students feel like I can go to that teacher and have a conversation, or that coach, or whoever it is, to try to feel like they have a connection with that kid. What we've noticed in surveying kids is like our vocal numbers are better, but there are definitely pockets of kids in our surveys. We did a survey earlier this year who said, I feel disconnected, I don't have an adult. So we now know who those kids are, and we've asked teachers to really work to try to make connections with those kids. There's a thing called the 2x10 model, which is a very simple strategy, which is just talk to someone about something unrelated to school for 10 days for 2 minutes every day. And there's some research that shows that it's a way to build that connection. We feel like if kids have an anchor adult, they're going to be more likely to want to come in. But I think what's helpful is that we've been able to do that survey work and identify those kids. And we don't want to obviously come at them and say, why aren't you coming to school? We really want you to come. We don't want to scare them, obviously. But I think 2x10 is a strategy that is subtle, and it's easy to do. It's a light lift. It doesn't require any additional skills beyond just having a conversation. In the survey, we also asked kids things like, what are you interested in? What movies do you like? Like that kind of stuff, so that teachers have go-to conversations that they can have with kids that are unrelated to school. Implement restorative justice practices as part of the disciplinary procedure. We've done that. We did offer pre-pandemic 3 RJ PD sessions here. Colleen ran them and taught them to teachers. So if you're not as familiar with restorative justice, it's this idea of, it's an approach to discipline that isn't the traditional punitive approach. There's definitely a time and a place for punitive stuff, right? Anything related to violence, for example, hate speech, that kind of stuff. The punitive traditional approach is absolutely appropriate. But we're talking about the typical things that happen where maybe it's pure conflict, right? Or it's a kid acted a certain way in class and disrupted that class. All restorative justice is one of us serving as a mediator, and maybe the teacher has a conversation with that kid, and the kid understands, hey, I was out of line and I hurt this person by saying this thing or doing this thing, and the kid recognizes it. That's teaching. That's what we do, right? We're not law enforcement. I'm not a judge. I'm not here to do that, right? I'm here to teach. That, to us, is a much more effective way of teaching appropriate behavior than I think that sort of traditional punitive approach of you're suspended, detention. Not to mention that suspension, clearly now DESE is moving away from that, right? It's not an approach that's really recommended anymore. We wanted to, and we still do, want to increase the AP participation rate among students of color and high needs students. The goal was 80% of our students of color will take one AP course by June of 23. Why are we doing this? Well, the research is pretty clear that when students take an AP, they have better educational outcomes. They may get a 2 on that exam. However, they will benefit from that later on, from that experience. We're not saying that all kids have to take all APs or AP physics or whatever. It's all based on kids' interests. But I feel strongly that most of our kids can take an AP. Most of the kids in this building can take one. We didn't hit 80%, but we've made gains for sure. Our participation rate among students of color, it's increased each year since 19. It's doubled among our African American students from 19 to 23. And something we realized recently in some of the core work is that the way we do like course selection, course recommendations, it's technically standardized in the sense that like teachers use the same program to do it through Aspen, and they always have a conversation with kids. but the actual conversation, the questions that are asked are different from teacher to teacher. So we said, why not, let's just standardize it. It's the same, very simple 5 questions. You know your student in the spring, and you've hopefully identified kids where you might be able to encourage those kids to take an AP who otherwise wouldn't want to take an AP class. My worry, and I don't know where this comes from, is that I hope that we're not sending a message to kids that certain types of kids take APs. And I want to make sure that we can change that narrative and make sure that kids know, hey, listen, APs are for most of the students here. I think you'd be really good in AP Psych or AP Lang or whatever it is. And so we have to do a little bit of a shift in our marketing approach to AP. I think a lot of it is a little bit of the intimidation factor. And having been an AP teacher, I think I was guilty of this back in the day. I think that was the old approach. It doesn't make sense anymore. Another thing that we learned from PSAT, now everyone takes PSAT, which is great. In the past, most kids took it, but they paid for it on their own. The district's committed to PSAT, which is terrific. We're able to look at something called AP Potential. So College Board, when kids take the PSAT, they get some sort of a numerical value where they can look at that and they'll give us this data and they'll say, well, this kid got such and such a score. Perhaps this kid would do really well in AP English. And so what Guidance started doing last year was looking at those scores and having conversations with kids who might not be interested in an AP, but saying, look, like, this is telling us that you might do really well in this class. Have you thought about it? So that's goal 1. Should I pause at the end of all these? This is just a lot that I'm going through here, and I know it's late. Does it make sense to pause after each goal? Or?
No, keep going.
Yeah, keep
Okay,
going.
all right, okay. The second one, this relates to developing a written comprehensive curriculum. And so this is, I want to give a lot of credit to Dr. Bacon, her team, for really spearheading this work to try to make sure that we have curriculum formatted and mapped in the same way that lives somewhere that's accessible by all. The goal was 100% of all courses would be fully mapped, and we're not there. I mean, I think nearly all of our core courses are, but I can't say that all of our electives are fully mapped. The other part of this was developing a system for sharing curriculum maps. At the time, I think that was back when we had Atlas Rubicon, right, Dr. Bacon, which was just, what a name. It sounds like a tank or something, but it was this program that we had that was great. I don't want to make fun of it, but it just didn't really do what we needed it to do in terms of being a place to put curriculum so that if you wanted to access it, you could find it. So now we've shifted, everything is on Drive. The goal is to have a place where people could go somewhere on the website and see the map for junior English. Examine leveling practices among and within subject areas, and to reduce the number of tracks so that in our core classes we have ACP, AP, and honors. We've met that goal. Standardize expectations among all teachers of the same course. So that's rigor, that's pacing, and the goal was that 100% of courses with multiple sections will be aligned by 2023. Certainly made progress with this. We are aligned in terms of assessments. We've made progress in terms of pacing. Like courses are weighted the same, meaning that if, like, Mr. Calichman and I both taught the same class, our grade weights are the same. The percentages for such and such, quizzes are this percent. But in terms of the pacing, that's the next step of this. Like, we want to align them even further. The next one has to do with the digital learning specialist. So in coordination with the digital learning specialist, develop a center for innovation that incorporates the digital literacy and computer science benchmarks. We did that, right? We have the LIT Center upstairs. It's great. Credit to Ms. Mackie Knowles, everybody involved in that. I mean, that is the space to go to in the building. It's beautiful. Teachers are regularly using it. Daily, they're using it. Ms. Wilbur's in there teaching lessons. And I think we've made some progress toward those computer science standards. We're not quite there yet. I think there are 3 strands that I noted here. So there's computing and society, computational thinking, and computing systems. I think computing and society lives in a lot more classes, right? It makes sense. There's a lot of conversations about technology in classes. The others, maybe you don't see it as much, like computational thinking or computing systems, but we now have AP Computer Science. This is year 1 of that. It's a big class. It actually is taught in here. I don't know how many students are in it, but there are several, and it was very popular, and I think that's certainly progress toward that goal. And I think the next one, this is of all of this, and I'm proud of all of these goals and the progress that we made, but I think of all of them, this one is the one that I'm the most proud of, and that's expanding career and technical educational opportunities for all students. And we wanted by June of 21 an alternative pathway developed for students not planning on attending college, for example, coursework and internships possibilities in advanced manufacturing. The time that this was written, we knew about innovation pathways, but we didn't know if we would have a staff person. And that was the thing that I was worried about, because traditionally folks who come out of those training programs, they go to the Vokes. They don't go to comprehensive high schools. But we got a real star teacher in Mr. Natoli, and he's hit the ground running with advanced manufacturing. He's leading that department of innovation pathways. It's growing. We now have a business innovation pathway. We're going to have an IT one next year. And what's really cool about those classes is that I think when we think back to when we were in school, there was a little bit of a certain kind of stereotype about who the shop kids were, right? That doesn't exist anymore. It's diverse. There are boys, girls in there, students of color, ELL kids. Some kids are in the pathway. Some kids are just taking the class because they just want to do something hands-on. And it's great to see. We also have the NSATS partnership program. So it has a lot of different names, but we often talk about it as the After Dark program, which it really isn't that anymore. So it's the partnership program with Essex Tech. Last year was the first year where we had our 2 students graduate. It was amazing. They both had jobs before our graduation here. So they graduated from Essex Tech late May. We had our graduation in June, and they both had full-time positions, one working in auto, and I think the other was working in maybe electrical engineering. This year we have more students there. The cohort's a little bit bigger. I think it's 7 kids will go through that cohort. So that's opportunities for kids who are not necessarily college-bound. Next goal was create a professional culture that demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement through the use of research, collaborative learning, innovation, and reflection. First part of this was to embed common planning time into the schedule. We have that now in all departments with the exception of health and wellness. Develop a professional culture built on shared trust, focused on collaboration and rooted in best practices. To have an outcome in that by the end of 21, all faculty and department meeting agendas will focus on collaboration and best practices. We've definitely seen that. I can say for sure that like the BLT meetings, so those are the meetings that I have every other week with content leaders, the team chair from student services, much more collaborative, much more of a problem-solving focus, and I've been in those meetings for many years in many different roles, and I feel like we're a lot more focused on problem-solving. We've done a lot with norming, so we have norms for those meetings. We have protocols that we follow. I learned that from Chris Snorkin, who's like the master of protocols, but they're very helpful, and I hope that they're things that they can take away when they're going and having their own department meetings. And something else that we did last year that I think we're starting to see some benefits from that is that we went through data-wise training through the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So this was an online module really about how to look at data, and it's just like a protocol. This is how you do it. It's an 8-hour session. We all went through it together as department chairs, and now when they look at data, for example, like MCAS scores, when they look at MCAS scores November 8th, each of those departments will do this the same way. It's a common language. What they find will be different, but it's rather than, hey, just like let's look at some data and talk about it, it's a process to go through where it's standardized and everyone contributes. Next one is a repeat in here. It's about standardizing expectations among all teachers of the same course, but I already addressed that. And then finally, the last one was to have a vision of the graduate. And so again, in 19, this was an entirely new thing, right? For the longest time before that, it was core values, right? We had our core values. So we now have a vision of the graduate. We developed that with all the stakeholders in 21, voted on it, adapted it in 22, and now we're looking at how do we now figure out ways to A, assess this, and B, make it like really live in the building. And right now, some of the work we're doing is to develop rubrics for this. And so if you click on that example of a VOG rubric, this is interesting. So this is a rubric from a school, Catherine Smith School. It's an elementary school on I think it's in California. And you can see their vision of the graduate up here at the top, right, their image, and then they have under that the different competencies: think, learn, work, communicate, collaborate, and contribute. And then these little descriptors, right, think critically. If you scroll down under think critically, they have this rubric, right? And that the first part of that, ask questions, is right here, and it's aligned to this rubric. So what they do there is they use this rubric as a way to really assess student progress toward the vision of the graduate. This is the next step of this. So we're doing this now in BLT, where we're going, I'll say this, I don't think we're gonna do this rubric, because having worked with rubrics for a long time, I think something like this, while this is terrific, and maybe it works for them, I don't think it works for us, because you can very easily get paralyzed by a rubric like this, because it's almost too specific. And it probably, I don't want to bash it, I think it's excellent for what they have, but I think we agreed as a group in that BLT that we'll develop rubrics, but we want them to be a little bit more broad, because we're talking about all kids, and we want these to be rubrics that we're going to genuinely use. So that's where we are now, is to develop something like this. And then ultimately where I'd like to get with this is to say, okay, we've got these rubrics. What is assessment going to look like? Is it going to happen on an individual teacher level? Is it going to happen with LC advisors? There are a lot of different ways to do this. One that I saw a school do in a video online that I thought was really interesting was they have a panel. So they have their seniors, they have a group of teachers, staff members, it's like 6 people, and the students come to this panel, sort of like dissertation style, and defend how they've met the vision of the graduate. So they would refer to work they did over the course of their career, and then they essentially are using the rubric, they're kind of rated, which I thought was really cool and unique. There's other ways to do it. Another school did an exhibition. So they had an event during, at some point at the end of the senior year. Families came in and kids were presenting like videos, different things about what they did to meet the vision of the graduate. So, but before we do that, we have to figure this piece out, which is the rubric for how we're gonna actually go in and assess the vision of the graduate. I know that was
fantastic. No, it was a lot, but that's what was asked for. You caught us up to speed. Comments and questions from the committee?
I have a question that you may not have the answer to. That chart that you had with the tiered interventions?
Yes.
How many kids are at that first and, well, not the first, the second and third levels?
I'd have to look. I mean, more in the second tier than in the third. I think it would depend on, if we're looking at counseling, what types of services those students are receiving. I'd have to look and see, but I can get back to you.
Yeah,
I don't know. But for sure, we've had, I think historically, a lot of kids who are getting services through our adjustment counselors, and then also through some of the like more specific programs like SWIFT.
Yeah. And then I was just asking Noelle, we had a little offside. So the learning community is the same as their homeroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was new to me. I just realized the other day that they are actually together for all 4 years.
Yes, so they go through all 4 years, and each year the themes are the same, right? So it's the same sort of concept. So we're doing community now, right? It shifts, the idea is it'll shift year to year. I think we would love to sort of develop it so over the course of the years the kids have a little bit of different experiences, but I think this is still new to us. We went from no advisory in the waterfall schedule to an advisory.
Yeah.
And so that block of time is LC one day, but then the rest of the time is that X block for the additional intervention.
And wasn't that a commendation from the NEASC?
Yes.
It was a commendation of having that specific block in the NEASC report.
Right, exactly. Having an intervention block to meet the MTSS goal, but also having an advisory and saying you need to have a place for advisory. You guys don't have that. We did a little bit of a crash course in advisory during the pandemic because we just needed to have a spot where we could connect with kids. So we kind of built one on the fly learned what worked and what didn't work from it, and then when we developed the new schedule, realized we can kind of have both things happen over the course of a week or a month, right? You can have LC, and you can also build in the X block on those other days.
First of all, great job. What strikes me, and really for both of you, is just the flexibility, and I always use the word pliability, of, you're looking at this, 2D document that you're making into a 4D document. And you're incorporating the educators and the people who are on the front lines to, look at various potentials of changing what we do here. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we're going to go back to the drawing board. So I think that's what just screams out at me as you're going through this, is that we are really doing a great job. You know that?
Well, I do know that. I do. The people that are presented tonight are rock stars, and maybe we haven't done a good enough job about bringing them forward to talk about the work that's going on. So as school committee members, you hear the chatter and you hear the complaints and you get the phone calls. But both of these, all three presentations,
right.
But to see the thought that's in a plan in the high school, and yes, it's out of whack, time-wise, because of various reasons, it's incredible work.
Yeah.
And I live at the middle school most of the week, and I love being up here and hearing the announcements as well, but that music gets me going in the office at the middle school every day, and I can see the kids running in. And up here, there's a really, the year started with a really positive vibe in all of the buildings, and it stays, even today on October 26th.
Right.
It's a good year.
Yeah, again, it was really impressive. Thank you, I appreciate that.
If I can just add to that, I think what's also interesting is, I don't think it was intentional, but having the data versus
Yeah, it wasn't
happening at
intentional. I'd like to say it was,
happening at
but-
the same time.
Right.
It definitely makes me feel better about the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
And I just want to add, just to kind of what Glenn said, I was hearing the flexibility as well, Dennis, in that, and, I know, successful projects and project plans, if they're going into like amber or red status, kind of hit the pause button and say, okay, what do we need to do here to, get back to green and get this thing over the finish line successfully, and, that definitely came through in what you said, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you both. My high school students, why don't you escape?
I was actually going to say, I mean, we've been here a while, you guys actually have school tomorrow. I really want to pay attention, this is just me, to not only your action plan, but the budget.
Well,
And I was
going to,
wondering,
could I make a suggestion, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful.
Should we end this first?
that's, yeah.
The kids go, yeah, the kids can go.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure you have
Thank you.
homework to do now, right? Yes,
Yeah.
so. Dr. Bacon? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a long day.
It was
9 hours at the police station.
I just have to say, superintendent, this is great. This is a great meeting.
Yeah.
I know you're exhausted,
Great.
but this is a great meeting.
It is a great meeting because, and I think, we haven't shown the good stuff because we've been out of whack and we've been trying to catch up, and
Right.
this is outstanding. So I do have a suggestion, and I don't want what I'm going to say to sound disrespectful at all, but this action plan took so much time to do, and there's still a goal that is not filled in. What I sincerely would like to do, and this isn't trying to be snippy, because I feel like the budget, the director of finance, 2 things have to be done
We
tonight.
definitely have to.
They're time sensitive. I would truly like to give all of you access to this document, to comment in it, as you see fit. I really spent more hours on this than I care to. I guess because I'm in my 10th year, this doesn't rattle me anymore, but there've been a lot of personnel issues that don't rise to the level of involving the school committee, but that have taken up a lot of my time, that have made me miss the ADL Good Fight, have made me miss even the family engagement forum today. So I really would like to give you access to this, so you can go in and put your comments in there, and we can work from there. You know, if I were the first 3 years of my superintendency, definitely going over this would be important. I mean, but we're talking about year 10, and so I would like you to comment on this online, if that's okay. Sure. And
Could we
then,
just do a follow-up next meeting
Sure,
then?
absolutely.
Like, even if it's a short one?
yeah, I would love to do that, but I know that the work
Yeah.
that Cheryl and I have been doing is much more important tonight, and maybe we can move the rest of it to the next meeting, with the permission of the chair and the committee. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to our Director of Finance.
Thank you. Do you want me to share? I can, yeah, and especially the next piece of it might be easier for me to flip through the slides. All right, thank you, everyone. So apologies for this being a little bit delayed, but this is the first quarter budget update as far as where we stand going into 2024. I think we all knew that this was not going to be an easy budget to manage, and we knew that kind of going into it, and that, I don't want to say all the stars had to align, but a lot of stars needed to align. And when we talk about budgets, and I know we've talked about it as a committee extensively, but you know, I do want to mention, having been on the town side, now on the school side, school budgets are so highly unpredictable. And it's a big difference from when I worked on town finance. Not to say that the town budget doesn't have some unpredictability, but just for instance, just from when I typed this up to today, things have changed, right? So let me just first jump into where we kind of ended the first quarter. Right now we have a budget deficit of about $258,000, and we had kind of a number of unanticipated costs, big piece of that being tuitions. So when we budget for tuitions, and especially when we have really tight budgets, the maybes don't make it into the budget. And you kind of cross your fingers and hope that they don't come to fruition. We had the lucky advantage of a number of them coming to fruition this year for us so far. And even since this budget memo was created, 3 more that were even on the maybe list have occurred. So there is some good news, and the good news is that our circuit breaker reimbursement is about $300,000 more than what we had budgeted. So, in speaking with Pam, after I put this memo, I said, you know, look, we have to really tampen down the budget. We're already first quarter tight budget. Then, oh, great news. We have additional $300,000 in circuit breaker. It's looking like we're in a better spot. Then I meet with Martha Raymond last week, and we have those 3 additional placements, which are another $226,000 that we hadn't anticipated at all. Now, that number could change a little bit because we know they're going to happen, but all the paperwork and everything hasn't, so we're not, as of today, incurring those costs. And in fact, one of the individuals is under the care of Boston Children's. I think she had said they were an immigrant family as well too. So we know we're going to have issues there. We don't even know the breadth of issues with that student at this point. So they were kind of a move-in case for us. So as I look at the cost centers and talk about where the issues are, like I just said, the main thing is special education is over budget as of this memo, $558,000. We have had to add 4.7 FTEs, and that's to cover student needs that came through the IEP process. We are spending money to cover recess and lunch duties now at the elementary schools as well, too. So that's kind of a new budget issue. So, I mean, we're doing our best, but I will say, and I want to say this now, I fully anticipate having to use the Special Education Reserve Fund. We are committed to managing the budget as best we can to use as little of that. When I initially had run the numbers, I thought we'd maybe be using about 144,000 of that. That has since grown since last week. So that is, in a summary, where we are today. And, you know, talking about some of the things as we look forward to, you know, as we're trying to balance all the needs with the 25 budget, and, you know, we've discussed, we already know of a few things that are kind of outside our realm, but, you know, like Dr. Bacon brought up, there's a new curriculum too that we need to implement at the schools. That's very costly. And so, you know, discussions are being had about, well, can we phase it in, reduce the cost? But it's something that Superintendent Angelakis brought up. You know, she's not going to waver on curriculum, right? That's not something that's going to get cut. And so we have to find a way to make it work as we go into 25. Right now, facilities overall is running under budget. We've had a handful of vacancies that we just haven't been able to fill. They actually did just fill one this week, so that's great. And then facilities always has money for just general, not large repairs, but general repairs that come up, which we haven't had to spend. So right now that is helping to soften the budget impact for us, but you know, I don't think I've ever in my tenure in the first quarter been coming out and saying we're already in the hole. So it's unfortunate, but we know it, and the district knows it, the leadership knows it, everyone knows it, and we're doing everything we can to.
It's critical needs only now.
Yeah.
Everybody, so we're basically freezing the budget in October.
Well, so that's actually my question is, when you have a deficit like this and you freeze, what are you freezing, really? Like buying paper? Or,
Discretionary spending,
you know,
asking for new positions.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was going to say, a lot of these things like are chump change.
But chump change adds up.
It does. It does add up. And, you know, to Superintendent Angelakis' point earlier, that conference came up. I questioned it again because it's cost, but and so it's constantly having those discussions.
We had two situations, and these are a couple of the personnel issues that, one larger than the other. But, for example, they came asking for a position in special education. And rather than the old days of, okay, the student needs it, we're going to do it, Cheryl had a conversation with, well, wait a minute, is there enough, a whole team of people came together, and you ended up piecing the coverage together for that position in a way that worked, but in a way that didn't add staff. I had a situation, a much larger situation, where the solution was going to be to throw money at it, and instead of throwing money at it, meeting after meeting after meeting with a host of groups I had, it was solved without any additional money. So, but it's taking time, it's taking energy, it's taking scrutiny and stopping everything that's coming across our desk to say, wait, there has to be a different way to do this. My question is this sustainable? Like,
Well, that's what I mean. You can only do that so many
times.
times.
We're doing it this year, looking ahead to next year. You know, I think about the reductions we made, and one of the things I was going to bring up when Dr. Bacon said it is, you know, through math coaching at the elementary level, and I immediately reduced all the coaches. So that was the unsaid elephant in the room for that one, that did those coaches really make that much of a difference to see that growth and that achievement in the elementary math area? So, but these personnel issues, you know, we're stopping, and we're like, wait, let's come together and try to figure out a different solution that doesn't involve money. And we've done it successfully, but it's time, effort, energy, and it's not sustainable.
Well, we also don't have the personnel resources. I mean, we don't have people with extra you know.
Tons of extra
We don't.
bandwidth
We
to.
don't.
Like they're not, that, you know.
No,
they're-
it's moving schedules,
Yeah,
it's
I
moving
just-
this
right,
point,
I'm just saying,
moving this, yeah, it's
But
really
we've
hard.
made so many reductions, there's not extra people to
Nope,
reduce.
there are not.
There's not.
Well, I mean, look, we've been saying this forever, you know, you can't cut your way out of this problem.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
So, did this come up in the tri-chair?
Yes.
Yes,
So the town and the finance committee is fully aware?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've had, I missed the first tri-chair, but the second tri-chair that we attended a couple weeks ago was a really great discussion about finances.
Do we think that there is benefit to having the school committee speak during public comment at the school committee, at the finance? Both, like at any meeting, so that this is not, you know, like an 11th, like once again, we're standing at
It's
town.
October, I think, yes.
I think that we've talked as a tri-chair, I mean, there's like an appetite to have the Cheryl and Amy work something out, right? But we just have to, we have to.
I just think it's important that while the town, while all of everybody sitting at a desk understands it and knows the seriousness of it, I just think that there is value to our electorate, our taxpayers, our voters, knowing that this is an issue. Because for the last 4 years, we've been standing in front of town meeting, pleading for more money. And what will make this year any different?
Right.
Yeah.
So, having now started to watch the select board meetings, which is quite the joy. They have a lot of discussions about a lot of departments except the school department. You know, you would think that listening to the select board discuss budget, the school department doesn't exist. So it is now bordering on November. We're already in the hole. We haven't even discussed FY25.
Mhm.
I have a magic number in my own head about FY25. And I believe that either, and I'm happy the tri-chairs are, you know, seeing that there's a problem, but I just wonder how long do we wait until, just to use Amy's suggestion, we actually do go to a meeting and say, you know, knock on the door. We're not fooling around. We cannot cut out of this. I mean, we can, but then it's draconian. And, you know, when does that happen? And I think we're getting close to that, because again, you're telling us now that after the first, we're already in the hole after the first quarter. We've had X number of students move into district. Okay, this is one of the things we have said for a couple of years now, before I was on the board, right? We can't control when kids come in. We have to educate those children. And that takes a chunk out of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pretty bare bones. And, you know, we heard 2 great presentations, right? These people are busting their ass right now, okay? And I think we as a board need to back up the educators at this point. And I think if we need to go in and have a polite conversation in public, you know, whether it's to, you know, just to remind you, this is what the budget is, you know, townspeople. I think it's time to consider doing that. I do. I get really worried if we start waiting any longer, as we, you know, when we start drafting that FY25 budget, and we're sitting in February, right, having that meeting about, you know, what's the new fiscal year gonna look like. We're gonna be so far in the hole, we're not even gonna know what to do with ourselves.
Well, and to that point, Glenn, I was looking at Ms. Stella because I wanted to share that at the tri-chair, we did share, looking ahead at the new elementary school, some future costs that are unanticipated and not budgeted for in the operating budget already. So we have planted a little bit of a seed.
Like in addition to busing?
In addition to busing, the operating cost of one new elementary school versus the 3 existing elementary schools because of the new systems. So they've done a very, I don't want to say the number now because it's been a very
Cheryl asked Max's department to put together a rough operating cost. So that cost is more than the 3 elementary schools currently. The busing cost for 3 buses is more, so we're already starting out in a deficit without even talking about kids.
I also want to remind everyone on the board, and to go back, and I know Ms. Angelakis will know this, when this building opened, granted, it was a very different system run by the state at the time. Because there was no understanding of the cost of this physical plant, that was one of the reasons that we ended up laying off, was it 30 teachers and closing a building. So it's never too early to say, you know what, we have, and we've said this before, we have a structural problem we have to deal with, okay? And town side, you control it, you control those dollars. But you know, before we start talking about other things on the town side that money wants to be spent on, or, you know, a certain tax on certain things, we need to take a long, hard look at what needs to happen for that FY25 budget to be palatable for the community. And if we want the community to be understanding, we have to start sooner than later.
So I just want to jump on what you said for a minute and just say, I think it's important that that if we do go before the board, and, you know, maybe it's not public comment, maybe it's just arranging for you to sit and like be a guest at their meeting and have like a fill-in. I'm not surprised that they aren't talking about our budget at their meetings. Frankly, we'd be annoyed if they were. So, you know, I don't want to point any fingers there. If they were talking about our budget, we would be the first people to say, you shouldn't be talking about our budget without us there.
That's a good point.
Well, I mean, it'd be nice if they acknowledged.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to talk about.
Don't forget, we got the schools too, even if they're not talking about a number.
They seem to talk about a lot. You know, I understand what you're saying.
I do think that, like, it's, I do, and I'm sounding like Suzanne here. I think that we have an opportunity here. I must have taken my meds differently today or something. But yeah, I think that there's a good opportunity here to put you in front of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure what, I don't see being an agenda item, I don't see being a guest, but I certainly can ask, certainly. I mean, I think it's worth FinCom and Select Board, and I think, like, I mean, we have the tri-chairs, and I'm hoping people are bringing back information, but I don't know that they are or not.
Yeah, that would be shocking.
At least on the Select Board level, they're not.
Yeah, we had talked about having a meeting with all 3 boards.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth, talked a little bit about the tri-chair, and I think that I don't know what I didn't feel like that meeting was going to happen.
Yeah, I know they had talked about doing something in January.
Is that because they don't want to hear it? Because
I mean, probably,
no, I think
right? What's in it for them? Right?
But it's not just, the meeting can't just be us going and saying what we need. There has to be.
Why not?
I mean, if we're requesting it,
60% of the budget.
We
why
can
not?
certainly invite them to this meeting or have a meeting and present.
Because the thing is that the community really watches those meetings. They don't watch this meeting. Okay, some do, but not.
Like a joint meeting? No.
I don't know. I just, like, the reason why I thought going to their public comment is
no,
because
us
people
going,
watch it.
without a doubt, more people watch the Select Board meeting, right? Without a doubt. I'm not sure, the joint meeting is,
the joint meeting is what helps set our tax rate. Or at least it did a few years ago. And so if we're gonna get to our town meeting again in May, and they're like, well, it's gonna be 2% plus whatever that dumb amount is. And it's too late. We're not gonna stand there on town.
Right.
It has to be before they set the tax rate, and they're about to set the tax rate.
when do they make that decision for the following year?
As far as how much?
The two, yeah, what the tax rate's going to be and what the guidance is gonna be for the various town departments? I mean, they've probably already.
So usually I think that you set their tax rate at the end of November, like somewhere around there, is when they have their, all the hearings and tax rate setting and whatnot.
So if we as a board have a feeling that it should be different than what it's been for the past several years, we need to make that known as a board.
Right.
I think, formally.
Yeah, I mean, look, I appreciate where the town administrator is coming from, that he, in the same way that our superintendent has a budget and she needs to stick with it, he's got a budget, and, you know, he's got something to prove, he's gotta stick with it. So I think we just have to get there before that decision is made, so.
So they're public hearings to.
Correct, but I just want to clarify something. This tax rate hearing is based off this current year's budgeted appropriations. So when they're setting the tax rate and all that, that's based off what we're doing today. So the tax rate is going to be the tax rate, and what they said isn't going to impact 25. It would be town meeting voting on our budget in 25, what that would look like, and then that would then hit your tax rate next fall, if that makes sense.
I guess I'm.
But I think part of the conversation in like a hearing, for example, is to show up and say, okay, so this was our budget, but Q1 we're already $300,000 in the hole.
Right.
So this wasn't enough.
Right.
Like.
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
Right, like
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying, like, that's the discussion to
Yeah.
have at a public
Yeah.
comment.
I just feel like every time we get to May and they say, well, you know, this is these are our guidelines, this is that, you know, that 2%
Yeah.
plus, that if I don't quite understand, just because I'm not in I don't really understand what you're saying, but I feel like we're always behind the 8 ball.
Mm-hmm. I don't think the timing of your conversation, I do think the timing you're discussing is correct. I just didn't want to muddle it with this year's tax rate is impacting 25's budget. It's next year's.
I think I understand, but.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think that now is the time to be bringing up these issues, absolutely, for 2 reasons. One, although we have talked about it at Tri-Chair, I don't want anyone to be caught off guard when we're in the spring drawing down that special education reserve fund. I also want to make sure that the commitment that was made in the budget agreement to give us the additional Chapter 70 money is on the special town meeting warrant, because that is going to help this deficit that we have. And that will help reduce what we need out of the reserve fund, hopefully, as well.
So that actually has to go onto the warrant.
Yes, it does, absolutely.
We also have the homeless transportation, that little bit of money.
And then the other piece of it, which wasn't part of our budget agreement, which I have asked and haven't quite received a definitive answer, is the homeless reimbursement of $26,000 that they received, for that to come back to the school department as well too, because that's an expense that we incurred and the state reimbursed.
Yeah.
So, you know,
These have all been brought up at Tri-Chair.
Yeah, they have. And so those two pieces, at least for this year, would help soften our deficit. So, I mean, to me, that's the most immediate thing that I think we need to resolve. And also, like I said, I don't want anyone to be surprised when we say, hey, look, we need that $300,000.
Year one.
We didn't think we would, but.
I think that's like sunshine on the issue is really important.
Right.
Yes, yes.
So how are we gonna do that? What are we thinking?
I mean, my recommendation is that our chair speak, and, you know, maybe we just work together to come up with what that message is.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Which is an
happy to
update on
go.
the current, the issues with the current year, and then also
Anticipated issues.
Right. I mean,
and whatever reset we need starting next year.
Right, so Cheryl, I hear what you're saying about this fiscal year. I gotta tell you, what keeps me awake is next year.
Oh, yeah.
It should.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
this year, I think somehow, by hook or by crook, we'll work it out. But, you know, how far in the hole are we gonna be when you present your budget? I mean, that number could require some very interesting tax on this committee. And so that's what keeps me awake.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, being $250,000 in the hole after a quarter is a problem. But I have complete faith and confidence that, some money's coming in, some money's coming out, that might not be as bad at the end of the year. It's still gonna be bad, right? You don't wanna be in the hole. But we'll be able to, somehow that's gonna be covered,
Mhm.
But on a much larger number is next fiscal year.
To that point, which I didn't really talk about too much, but outside of some of the costs we already know we'll be incurring that we have never incurred and would never have budgeted for, because we're drawing down so much of our circuit breaker, right? We don't have that cushion going into next year's budget like we always have, right? So that, we already know the tuition budget is going, well, it's gonna go up because we have all these extra tuitions anyway, but then it's gonna go up.
It always
even
goes
more.
up.
Right, but it's gonna go up you're gonna see an exponential increase in the tuitions coming out of the appropriated budget because we'll have that much less circuit breaker to soften that.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest dollar number that's gonna be impacted. I mean, and I don't want anyone to be quoting me in October on what 25's looking at like, but rough estimate right now, I think we have about $700,000 in unbudgeted costs that sit outside our normal increases that have to be covered somehow.
Not just special education.
No, that's.
Talking about like new school stuff.
The new school.
Yeah, I mean, like you pointed out, we've never had 3 elementary schools that have air conditioning before. That costs a lot of money.
Right, well, we know based on Max Casper's sort of work that it's gonna be significant, right? And part of it is like talking to the finance committee and the select board about how to fund that and what kind of monies where. I mean, I don't know what happened at the MSBA meeting, but I know we got more money this week from the MSBA. They had a vote on the 25th.
Yeah, we don't know I spoke with Andy about it, and his estimate is 2.3 to 2.4 million. But that will just come back as a reimbursement to us, so that really just lowers the cost the town's gonna be spending on the project.
But the town knows that.
Yeah.
And if there's a way to access some capital or some free cash because we're just trying to figure out how we can sort of move money around so we can use that money. That's not, do you know what I'm saying? It's just like
we need a new baseline starting.
Yeah, we need a new baseline.
That's a really good way to say it. That we need a different baseline.
Yeah.
But we also, I mean, especially in the first few years of this building, we're gonna have some unanticipated costs without a doubt. I mean, we have a whole new room that's not staffed, like the whole STEM sort of area, and we just have stuff that we haven't had before that are gonna be some costs, and energy is one of them, but busing, like, and having a commitment from the town to help with that busing and trying to figure out if we can make some sort of stabilization or reserve account or something to put some of this money into to help not have this in our operating budget.
So I know, I can't even remember what year it was that we had that group come in and help evaluate us from the Collins Center. We talked all about our zero-based budgeting processes. And it just kind of, I'm getting ahead of it because this is really about our next budget, but this is, kind of drives home again the fact that everything's just going to have to use your term, just like have a reset of what our baseline is.
And I do think that, I think from my perspective, that's why having special town meeting appropriate the additional Chapter 70 and the homeless transportation to our appropriate budget, that creates a new baseline for this year, right? And then some kind of, and I don't know how we get there, but somehow getting to a new baseline with this new school and the costs associated with this new school, I think once we get to that adjusted point, then growing it, the financial guideline is doable, and I
Well,
think.
right, like just after a reset, we
Right.
like a reset or a new baseline or
But
something.
like, we've said this for a couple of years now, so I just, like, we gotta get out the.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that are happening right now that's making this like.
That are gonna compel it.
The year, like,
Right.
you know, just the special, I mean, you know, we've been talking about it, but it's happening.
Right.
Like in the school and the fact that we're at large class sizes and no extra room to sort of shuffle people around and cut things, like, you know, no more sort of making do.
Right.
Or making it work.
And I think, you know, to take it back to this year, right, and talking about, and I know we talk about it a lot, and some people kind of get sick of us talking about it, but, you know, we have a new out-of-district tuition. At best, that's only gonna cost us $40,000, at best. I mean, that's our best-case scenario, right? And it just goes upwards from there into the hundreds of thousands, right? And I'm not saying that the town doesn't have some unpredictability on their side, right? We, you know, an employee has some life-changing event, now they're on a family plan, right? And that's something that they weren't able to predict. But at best for them, that's 21,000. So it's the magnitude of some of these things too. So I'm not trying to say that they don't have some of this unpredictability that we do. They certainly do. I think that the scale of it is different.
Right.
And so, you know, a budget might be able to absorb 21,000 or 40 or 60 or 80 or 100. But when we're talking,
One person could equal 200.
right now we're talking a budget that we budgeted 4.1 million for tuition. We're at 4.7.
Wow.
I mean, so that's, you know, that's difficult to absorb.
Not surprising.
I know, I don't feel
It's just not,
surprised.
but I
So-
think we,
Sorry, good, no, you finished what you're saying.
I was just saying, we just, you know, we're beating a dead horse here. We have to, it's time.
So I think that writing something, organizing a statement of sort of where we stand today and our anticipated.
I think we should have something written that we give to both, and then.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to give it out and
then go
say
and
it.
make it in public
Say it,
so
like
that
announce
they,
it.
yeah.
At least get it to the public domain.
Right.
Yeah,
You're okay with that, Mr. Chair?
yep, as long as you help me.
Yep. I think we all have a burden on this.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yep, I agree.
Any questions about 24 and where we're on 24?
This is the easy part.
So then the next thing I wanted to talk about with the committee was a kind of new budget book. Just want to get it into slideshow here. So when I took a look at the budget, and, you know, this is something that I live and breathe, and even still, some pieces of it were hard for me to understand and pull out. And I know that we live and breathe it, but others don't. And so I really wanted to think about, how do I present all that same information in a maybe more, I don't want to say layman's terms, but for someone who doesn't live and breathe it, in a way with which they can absorb it, understand it. And so I wanted to show potential, or where I would like to take the budget book, and it's actually kind of combined as far as a presentation and the book, and there might be some additional slides we put in here, but this is just a mock-up. Please, none of the data in here is accurate data, so don't look at the data here. And so I'm gonna flip through this pretty quickly, but, you know, kind of vision and mission statements, you know, the district's kind of goals and plans, then just a very high level of overall what the budget looks like, and, some highlights, big picture. Then, what were some of the superintendent's goals with this budget? What are we trying to do? What is the building leadership trying to do with this budget? This should look fairly similar to what you've seen before, but it's just the summary, the cost center summary, which is what you've had previously. But then I like to look at things location-based as well, too. So it's also showing you by location, building location. Next year for 25, though, there'll be one elementary school, so you won't see each of them listed. This shows, kind of all the other sources that help to fund our budget and how much we're utilizing from those outside funding sources. And this is just a graph of it, so it's trying to, some people are more visual, some people are more data-driven. So I tried to put some of this stuff in graphs because it's sometimes easier for people to look at. This is just showing what positions we are funding outside of the appropriated budget. So if they're grant-funded positions, or if it was a revolving fund position, what our federal and state funding levels look like, a summary of them, which this is pretty much what was in your previous slide presentation, just looks a little bit different. This is an overview of circuit breaker, how much we received, spent, and our balance, total compensation for all the staff. This is FTE, so what our staff, our total FTE count for the district looks like. This is just another, this was a slide that Sean requested, so I put this in here. For tri-chair. This is enrollment, so this is the enrollment information. Same thing, just presented a little differently. This is by school, so you can kind of drill down to it, and I think actually the superintendent shared this slide in a previous meeting.
Oh, is this actual data?
Yes, that was. Some of this.
But that'll change drastically next year too. It'll just be 3 tall lines.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see the increase at the high school and the middle school.
Right.
In this one.
Can I ask you to go back a slide? Yeah, thank you.
This one?
No, this one. If there's a way to just stick another, and again, I really want to kind of get myself used to one elementary school.
Yep.
Could you just show this and combine the elementary schools on a different slide?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And I mean, I think, so while you'll see stuff here that says Clark, Hadley, Stanley, when I actually do the budget book, it's going to say
elementary.
Yeah.
For next
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Okay.
So this
even
was
if you,
just,
even if you made one bar and just put the 3 different
that's
colors
what I
on
mean.
one
Just-
bar.
Right.
I want
Yeah.
to just visually
Yeah,
start
like stack
thinking
it.
about
Right. Always, that's a
total,
great idea.
total elementaries, total middle, total
Yep.
high school.
this was actually something that we presented last year, and it's kind of seems to be a hot topic, so it's just our per pupil expenditure in the comparative districts. This is something that you've seen historically, just, kind of where the kids are for special education by program. And then, and I only mocked this up for the elementary school, but my plan is to have these same slides for each location. So what I'm going to show you here, you would see for high school, middle school, and district-wide. I just didn't put them in the mock-up. So their goals and what they're hoping to accomplish with the budget. Again, I made this up. You can tell I'm not in education. And then, their specific location budget, how much it increased, and some of the driving factors behind their budget increase or decrease, so any highlights that they have by location. And then this is kind of the detail by DESI code, which I think you're used to. Was in your budget book previously, but it's by, so it's just the elementary school's budget by their DESI code. And then my thought is in an appendix to actually include the entire
budget
detail, like every single
I think
line,
that's a
like
great
nothing
idea.
rolled up. It's like literally every account that we have. For a lot of people, hopefully they don't look at it because it'll probably make no sense to them, but if they want to,
No, it'll lead to like, why did this go up $20?
It will be there. And so there'll be an appendix with every single line in it. And then for the school committee, in your budget books, at least historically, I've always provided a staff list. Just, I don't put names in here, but you can see positions, how many FTEs in the compensation. And so that's it in a nutshell.
First of all, I love the idea of having a little bit of information about each one of the schools and accomplishments and future. It was one of the things that I actually really appreciated about the town's budget book last year, that in each of the departments, it was like a report from Gino Cresta and a report from the library. So I think that's a really good thing to have. One of the things that I've struggled with over the years is what is the total cost that it costs to run this district? Because it is more than just our town allocation, and having all of those grants worked in there, I think is really helpful. I think it's important for, not only for us to see, but for everybody to see that, while it's a $31 million budget, that it's really not.
Right, yeah.
And we've never really seen that or been presented with that comprehensively.
It's a really interesting question. It would be interesting, that's a really good point, actually. What's the dollar figure the town actually gives us?
It's what they vote on at the town meeting.
No. So, but don't, when they, and I'm sorry, it's late, my head's not really. When we're voting on the budget, they're voting on the whole number, and that's less grants and all that?
No, they're voting on what they give us.
Yeah.
What the town allocation is. Okay. It does not include, so it costs our district more than $31 million to run.
Right. I think I'm actually saying that, but I'm saying it backwards.
Yeah, we vote a whole number.
What's the delta of what they give us, what the town gives us, versus what we actually spend?
With all the grants.
With all the grants?
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty hefty number.
Significant number.
Well, the grants like always around $3 million, right? It's like
So it's 10%.
roughly $3 million.
And then the Nahant revolving fund.
Yeah.
is big.
So it'd be interesting to actually maybe add a slide and kind of.
Like our budget sources.
That's what I was trying to say. I was just saying it backwards.
Do you want the cost that the town pays for us on there as well, too?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get every number, really.
You mean like healthcare and?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, every number.
Yeah, that would be great.
The more information we have and the more information we can share.
Well, that's a weapon that's used against us often,
Right.
so I'd like that there.
It's gonna be a big, what the town pays for healthcare and insurance, or, I don't know, be a real number.
Yeah.
And now this slide, depending, and because this will be somewhat dependent on when the town is kind of finalizing their budget, right? Because then if we're including town costs, we need to wait till they finish their costs, and then they do an allocation. So this slide might be something that we present late, we might present, the superintendent might present her budget, but then this slide might be something that we present later purely because of that.
Because we don't want to complicate the process of our town allocation.
Right.
But I think it's important for us as a school committee to know.
I think also the two slides that show the student population and the number of teachers, if they were superimposed, where you can see the number of teachers going down, the school population going up, like from.
Didn't you attempt to do that?
I did. So it becomes a little difficult to map them together because you have student enrollment that's a number way up here and an FTE number that's here. So then, like I tried to do it with a line. The scale is so
it's just
screwy.
way off.
Yeah. It almost looks like our FTEs are like flat because of the scale.
Number.
Yeah.
You did try that.
I will keep trying.
Maybe the number goes on there.
About it,
or maybe
there's a way to break. There's probably a way to break
Yeah, I'll keep working.
Or just even if it's a number that appears in the bottom, you know, like for each year, if you've got 700 kids in the school this year with X number of FTEs versus this year with F number.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll work, I'll try and work.
Good idea.
something.
Yeah, I just think like, I think when I looked at that graph that, that Ms. Stella created, I was shocked because you get that our staffing went up a little bit during COVID, like that weird sort of bubble, right? And then it went down.
Mhm.
And then we keep talking about how much harder it is to educate kids and how, the kids are so far behind, but you still see our staffing going down.
Well, yeah,
And it's
like
like-
we hear about the social emotional learning, we
Right?
hear about like the number of counselors that we need, like, so
Right?
not just teachers, but all of our educators.
But I think it's just like, it's not matching the narrative of what we need at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was really, it's exciting to get every time we get a new budget, it always seems like this is the best one, and then
Yeah, I know.
someone else will be like, wait, this is better.
Well, my goal, like I said, is that so anyone can very quickly look at it and get the real pointed pieces of information that you want to pull out of the budget. And if anyone wants to go line by line, by all means, they can in the back.
Yeah.
But at least, people can somewhat understand what's going on with the budget.
Awesome.
All right.
Can we
Did
go
you
to the
wanna-
consent agenda? I've circled everything else to move to the next meeting. I circled.
The discussion, the
Action plan.
subcommittees.
Yep, all that. If we could go straight to the consent agenda. Do the minutes.
Finish it up, John. I didn't mean to jump in. I just can't help myself.
You and me both.
I know.
Yeah, zero participants online, 0 people in the audience,
Yeah, so there's no need for any
so no public comment.
public comment or anything.
I'm sorry, so the donations, that's all next time?
That's all next
Okay.
time. Yep, we're just going straight to the consent agenda.
Okay, let me just read that then. Consent agenda, the consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. And it looks like we have regular session minutes from September 28th, 2023 as our agenda item.
I will make a motion to accept.
Second.
Do we need an individual vote here? Okay. Everyone
All in favor?
favor?
Aye.
Looks like it's unanimous.
I'll make a motion
Would
to
someone like to make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
I will second.
All those in favor?
All in favor? All right, we are adjourned.
Goodbye.
Long.